steel, firearms, and the Industrialists crossing into another world. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 101 Wizard. 3 years ago, Maltz Kent was bitten by a strange bat while hunting. Upon returning home, his wound began to fester and fester. After enduring several days, he developed a high fever and fell into coma. The physicians they consulted shook their heads, suggesting the Kent family should prepare for the worst. Just when the family thought the Earl was about to be saved, a mysterious figure arrived. This was a traveling healer named Barnett, who claimed to have a way to save Earl Maltz Kent. The Kent family was already in despair. Despite Barnett's strange appearance, resembling more of a barbarian mercenary than a healer, they still held on to the hope that he would try, thinking it couldn't be worse than they were. Unexpectedly, this Barnett was quite capable. Through his mysterious medicine, Earl Kent quickly awoke from his coma. However, both before and after the Earl's awakening, healer Barnett forbade anyone to witness his treatment. The Kent family remained deeply grateful to physician Barnett, treating him with the utmost hospitality for over a month. Only Earl Kent himself knew that this savior named Barnett was not a physician at all, but a wizard. Yes, a wizard. This serious illness had made Maltz Kent realize this fact: wizards and magic were not mere fabrications by the church to frighten the masses, but truly existed in this world. While his body remained unconscious, his consciousness was plagued by nightmares. He found himself in a vast labyrinth. He searched everywhere for an exit, but the labyrinth seemed to move. When he reached a dead end, he tried to return to a previously known path, only to find it drastically different. There were no terrifying sights, no frightening monsters, but something far more terrifying: monotony, an extreme monotony. As far as the Earl could see, there was nothing but himself and the brick walls that formed the labyrinth. Earl Kent was quickly driven mad by this monotony. He prayed to the Lord of Light, even if it meant being startled by a terrifying monster. After an unknown amount of time, a mysterious voice suddenly appeared out of nowhere, calling his name and guiding him. To the Earl, this voice was like a savior. Guided by the mysterious voice, he finally escaped the labyrinth in his dream, and the instant he stepped out, his body awoke from its stupor. Opening his eyes, the first thing the Earl saw was Barnett's face, adorned with mysterious patterns. For some reason, he immediately knew that the person before him was the owner of the mysterious voice in his mind. "Hello, Mr. Barnett," these were the first words he uttered upon waking. He himself didn't know why he could call out the person's name, as if he had known him for a long time, even though upon reflection, he knew nothing about this person except for the name Barnett. The Earl had considered sending this somewhat sinister healer to the church for evaluation, but subsequent events had completely dispelled that idea. During the subsequent treatment, the Earl of Kent found the man increasingly strange. After mustering the courage to probe further, Barnett readily admitted that he was indeed a legendary wizard. "Aren't you afraid I'll inform the church?" he asked, surprised by the man's frankness. Barnett sneered, "I can save your life, and I can also make you die, even suffer a fate worse than death." "Not just you, but your entire family." The Earl of Kent shuddered. He had made many enemies and received numerous threats over the years, but this was the first time a single sentence had instilled such fear in him. Even stranger, aside from the initial sneer, Barnett had spoken these words in a perfectly normal tone. Had he become a coward after his serious illness? He could only attribute it to the man's identity as a wizard. There must be some unknown means that instilled his fear in him. He temporarily suppressed the idea of notifying the church, because he couldn't live without the medicine from Bennett. At that time, he was still very weak, suffering from a persistent fever, and unable to even get out of bed. If he delayed taking the medicine provided by Bennett, his condition would worsen. After a period of continuous treatment from Bennett, he developed a strange dependence on the wizard, as if he would die without him. Gradually, this dependence gave rise to trust, a trust no less than that he had for his son, an unreserved trust. Even the Count himself was surprised by his own transformation. Previously, he had always been wary of anyone outside his immediate family. During their time together, He witnessed the wizard's various magical abilities, which made him increasingly interested in the legendary magic master. He had, without realizing it, adopted this respectful form of address for Bennett. "May I learn magic from you?" He mustered his courage to ask this question. Two fundamental human traits, the thirst for power and the curiosity about the unknown, and magic perfectly satisfied both. Moreover, he also had practical motivations. If he possessed this mysterious power, some things would be much easier to accomplish, such as elevating his title or enriching his treasury. Upon hearing his question, Barnett suddenly burst into wild laughter, as if something long awaited had finally happened. But after laughing, he gave a cold reply. "No." Earl Kent was greatly disappointed. "Why?" The other replied. "There are 3 reasons. First, you are too old, you've passed the optimal period for enlightenment. Second, studying magic is an extremely energy-consuming activity. Even if you didn't have this illness, your current mental state is no longer what it used to be, and it's simply insufficient to support the study of magic. Third, again because of your mental state, even if you were a genius and could understand the structure of spells with minimal effort, your mental strength is insufficient to support the casting of spells. Forcing a spell might endanger your life." After hearing these 3 reasons, Earl Kent felt as if the world had suddenly turned gray. The door to a brand new world had been closed to him. Then he heard Barnett's thoughtful sigh. However, he suddenly became excited again. "Master, you have a way, don't you?" He had rarely been this excited since he turned 40. "Sure enough," Barnett said, "I have a secret technique that can strengthen your body and enhance your spirit. After you use it, although you still can't compare to those who have been exposed to magic since childhood, you can still achieve some success if you're lucky." Seeing a glimmer of hope, Earl Kent anxiously asked, "Master, what exactly is this secret technique? Teach it to me." So he was taught a health regimen, sucking animal blood for each of his 3 daily meals and taking a secret medicine, meditating before bed and breathing according to a prescribed rhythm. Barnett said, "It's an extremely long process, but this secret technique will stop your body from aging, so you don't need to worry about not having enough time. Once your physique and spirit have recovered to a satisfactory level, I will teach you some basic magic. After that, it will depend on your own efforts and luck." He emphasized, "You absolutely must not stop, otherwise all your efforts will be in vain." Earl Kent repeatedly said he would remember it. Being able to stop aging was something many nobles dreamed of. In the days that followed, now that the Earl had one foot in the world of magic, Barnett gradually revealed some information to him. There were many wizards in this world, and for a long time, a mysterious and powerful wizarding organization existed, the Arcane Society. This organization had been secretly resisting the church, providing a safe haven for many wizards who joined it. And Barnett was a member of the Arcane Society. The sudden access to forbidden knowledge gave the Earl a strange sense of pleasure, as if he had returned to his childhood decades ago, when knowing some secrets made him feel incredibly important. What delighted him even more was that Barnett promised to introduce him to the organization if his magic reached a certain level. "Teacher Barnett," Earl Kent addressed him without regard for whether the other accepted the title, and Barnett tacitly accepted it. A little over a month later, despite Earl Kent's attempts to persuade him to stay, Barnett left, saying he would return to check on Earl Kent's mental state and, if suitable, would teach him magic. Sure enough, Barnett later visited Bayhorn Castle several more times. It was through these meetings that Earl Kent learned a glimpse of the organization's grand plan behind him. However, even he himself didn't realize that, from some point onward, everything had happened so naturally. The author's skill is too lacking. They tried to write the feeling of a behind-the-scenes force appearing, but it just didn't feel right. Could any readers recommend similar scenes in other books so I can see how the masters depicted them? Chapter 102 Conspiracy. After rescuing Maltz Kent, Barnett visited Bayhorn Castle several more times. He revealed to Earl Kent that one of the ultimate goals of the Arcane Society was to allow wizards to walk openly in the sunlight. To achieve this, the behemoth that was the church had to be destroyed. The church's hatred for wizards and magic was well known. It manipulated public opinion, linking them to demons from ancient legends and instilling fear of wizards in the masses. Therefore, the church, this obstacle, had to be overthrown. However, the church's organization was deeply rooted and its influence spread throughout the continent. The Arcane Society's strength was like an ant compared to an elephant. Exposing the power and directly challenging the church would be suicidal. Since open confrontation wouldn't work, they would resort to covert methods. The Arcane Society's leadership devised a massive and meticulous plan. Barnett's last visit here was 6 months ago, before Giles launched his rebellion in the south. During this meeting, Barnett finally revealed a part of this plan to Earl Kent, to instigate internal strife within the Kingdom of Alder. Count Kent racked his brains, unable to understand the connection between instigating the internal strife in the Kingdom of Alder and overthrowing the papacy. He voiced his question. Barnett immediately stared at him with a warning look, saying, "If you can truly enter the Arcane Council, some things will naturally become clear. Until then, I can only tell you, don't ask what you shouldn't ask." Knowing too much can be life-threatening, the Count broke out in a cold sweat again. He was increasingly in awe of this guide. Then Barnett's gaze softened, and he asked, "Maltz, do you still insist on becoming a wizard?" The Count nodded hurriedly. "Of course, teacher. It was your magic that saved me from certain death, and I am deeply impressed by the greatness of magic. Although it may seem ridiculous for someone my age to say this, I still beg you to help me realize this wish." Barnett nodded with satisfaction and said, "Now, a shortcut is laid out before you." Upon hearing this, Count Kent's mind was filled with a strange emotion. He immediately ran to his teacher and knelt down, eagerly asking, "What shortcut is it? Please show me." The Count was like a dog waiting for its master to throw it a bone. His eyes were incredibly complex, filled not only with longing but also with anxiety and madness. Barnett's lips curled slightly as he reached out to stroke Maltz Kent's head, much like a pet owner stroking a pet. "If you can perform great service for the Arcane Society, then even if you don't have the talent to learn magic, you will certainly be accepted by the Arcane Society. The Arcane Society is full of extraordinary people. They will definitely find a better way than my health cultivation methods to help you embark on the path of a wizard. So, are you willing to do something for us?" Count Kent was provoked by these two sentences and nodded anxiously, saying, "Please give the order, teacher. I am willing to contribute my insignificant strength. Please don't look down on me." "Ha ha ha." Barnett laughed wildly. The lord before him had completely submitted to him. No longer needing to hold back, he said smugly, "Maltz, from now on, you will gather strength for me in the Northwest, and you must gain the trust of your lord, the Duke of the Northwest, no matter what. Soon, a great upheaval will occur in the South. I will then come to you again, and use the Duke of the Northwest's trust in you to get close to him. I have my own ways of making him subservient to me, and using his power to start a rebellion in the Northwest. Until then, your actions must be as usual. Don't let anyone suspect anything. Remember, before I return, do not make any rash moves." Barnett left Bylin Castle after saying these words. Sure enough, a month later, news of the rebellion of Grand Duke Giles of Greedy Wolf arrived from the south. News of the Grand Duke conquering cities and seizing territories in the south kept coming, while the kingdom was unable to send troops to quell the rebellion due to a mysterious fire. Count Kent knew that this was because the secret society was operating in secret. He was overjoyed. The organization behind his teacher had such great power. He became even more determined to embark on the path of a wizard. He eagerly awaited Barnett's arrival, while simultaneously solidifying Duke Ferdinand's trust in him. During this time, he meticulously followed his teacher's orders, to avoid suspicion. After the royal warrant for reinforcements was issued, he even sent his son to personally lead troops south. This wait lasted 6 months. Just as he was growing impatient and wanting to vent his anger on the Gleman family, who had offended him, his teacher, Barnett, returned. Yes, the secret society is about to make its move in the Northwest, Barnett confirmed to Maltz Kent. Earl Kent excitedly said, "The moment I've been waiting for has finally arrived," but he immediately added, "However, teacher, it's not too late for me to conquer the northern territories. With more land and people under our control, our power will be greater. The Lordner has slighted me, he must pay the price." "No," Barnett flatly refused. "To attack a weaker opponent simply because you are slighted will incur the wrath of many, which will be extremely detrimental to your succession to the Duke of the Northwest." Earl Kent wanted to say something more, but "Teacher, what? Did I mishear you?" He suddenly realized that there seemed to be something serious in his teacher's words. "I said that your behavior is extremely detrimental to your succession to the Duke of the Northwest," Barnett repeated coldly. Succeed to the Duke?" Earl Kent asked incredulously, his words slurred. "HMPH. So, you don't want to?" No. "Teacher, I do. Earl Kent nodded frantically, like a pestle pounding garlic. Barnett continued, "I told you before, If I can create an opportunity to approach the Duke when he's off guard, I have a way to make him obey me. However, the method will be a bit drastic, so no one else can see it, and the side effects are significant. A Duke in that state won't live long. We need to make good use of this time to get him to pass the title to you, bringing the military power of the Northwest directly under our control. Earl Kent readily agreed. No problem, I'll figure that out. Barnett nodded in satisfaction. Until then, let's avoid trouble if possible. I don't want a chorus of opposition when you inherit the title, the Earl respectfully said. As you command, my teacher. Amazing. Amazing. Although he tried to maintain composure, Earl Kent's heart was pounding. To actually make a powerful duke submit, was this the legendary power of a wizard? Now he longed even more to wield this power himself. Chapter 103 Letting Go. What? Angelo's eyes widened in disbelief. Just moments ago, Earl Kent had returned to the banquet and announced that he would suspend the campaign against the Gleman family, allowing his vassals to return to their respective territories. He had gone to great lengths to incite resentment towards the Glemans among those present, and now that the Earl had pulled this stunt, he suddenly felt like a clown. Why? Your Excellency, didn't you promise me? You can't go back on your word, he angrily questioned Earl Kent. Insolence. Guards, throw him out. Earl Kent glared at Angelo, and immediately guards came and dragged him out. Let me go. Let me go. Your Excellency, we had an agreement. Angelo continued to shout defiantly as he was dragged out, but the crowd in the hall gradually lost track of his voice. The Earl of Kent addressed the assembled vassals and knights, saying, I know you are all puzzled, but an old friend advised me that war is never a good thing, and the most important thing is to persuade with reason. Therefore, I have decided to give Earl Gleman another chance. The crowd exchanged glances, remaining silent. The Earl of Kent, of course, knew what they were thinking and immediately said, however, I cannot let everyone's hard work go to waste. Therefore, I announce that each Viscount and Baron will be rewarded with 2,000 silver coins, and each knight with 1,000 silver coins. Wow, the crowd exclaimed in surprise. The Earl is truly a benevolent man. The Gleman family will surely be eternally grateful to the Earl. Such praises flowed continuously. The Earl of Kent laughed heartily. Although he enjoyed accumulating wealth, he also knew how to win people's hearts. He was never stingy when it came to spending money on such matters, otherwise, he wouldn't have become the second most powerful figure in the Northwest Bay, second only to Duke Ferdinand. Besides, he would soon need these vassals. When he and his teacher rose in rebellion, their service would be indispensable. At this moment, the Earl of Kent was brimming with confidence in front of his vassals, a stark contrast to his subservient demeanor before Barnett earlier. In his eyes, the dukedom and the wizard's power were already within his grasp. Only two people remained bewildered, the Earl of Kent's son, Jace, and his distant nephew, Emerson. However, at the Earl's prompting, they didn't immediately ask. The banquet continued, with the vassals clinking glasses and drinking to their heart's content before helping each other away. Once the hall was empty, Jace and Emerson approached the Earl of Kent. Jace eagerly asked, Father, what happened? The Earl seemed very pleased. He had drunk quite a bit at the banquet and was now slightly tipsy, his pale face flushed. He glanced at the two young men, seemingly deep in thought. After a moment, he spoke, Very well, there are some things you should know. The Earl of Kent led the two men to his study. He said softly, I intend to seize the title of Duke of the Northwest. The two men were shocked. What had happened to the Earl of Kent? Had he lost his mind? The Earl smiled slightly. Don't worry, I'm not crazy. Lord Ferdinand will willingly pass the title to me. Jace and Emerson exchanged a glance, both seeing the doubt in each other's eyes. Is that possible? The Earl of Kent said confidently. As for why, I can't tell you now, but you'll know in time. He stared at Emerson and asked, Young Emerson, as a royal commissioner, are you willing to support our Kent family? Emerson immediately replied, If Lord Ferdinand is truly willing, I will naturally support him wholeheartedly. The Earl patted him on the shoulder with satisfaction and said with a smile, That's good. I won't forget your Wilder family then. Then, as if remembering something, he added, I received definite news from the old friend I mentioned earlier. The royal family is in grave danger this time. You should immediately send a message to your father and advise him to make plans as soon as possible. Emerson was somewhat surprised, but still said, Thank you for the reminder, Uncle Kent. I will remind my father immediately, but he immediately changed the subject, asking, But why did you let Gleman go? It doesn't seem to have anything to do with you getting the dukedom, does it? He blatantly humiliated you." Recalling the humiliation he suffered in Lake Town that day, Emerson gritted his teeth in hatred. The entire room was shouting for him to get out. No one had ever treated him like that before. Earl Kent adopted a meaningful demeanor and said to him, "Young Emerson, if you can't tolerate small things, it will affect the achievement of your long-term goals. I don't want to cause trouble before I get the dukedom. Although I have 100% confidence in my abilities, I must eliminate all possibilities of unforeseen events. However, after I get the dukedom, if Gleman is still so blind, he won't be so lucky this time," he sneered. HMPH. There's still a long way to go. Emerson seized the opportunity to flatter him. Uncle Kent is truly far-sighted. Jace and Emerson chatted with Earl Kent in the study for a while longer before leaving. After the door closed, a figure emerged from behind the bookshelf. It was Barnett. Earl Kent immediately asked, "Teacher, what do you think of that, Emerson?" Barnett nodded. "No problem. According to my investigation, aside from being somewhat skeptical of your words, he has no other intentions, and he even has high hopes for you obtaining the dukedom." Earl Kent was relieved. If his teacher Barnett had discovered any ill intentions towards Emerson, he would have had to resort to some accidents to get the young man involved. He said, "Expectations are certainly high. The Wilder and Kent families have been on good terms for generations, and my acquisition of the dukedom would be of great benefit to them. The Wilder family is very powerful in the capital. If we can make good use of them, it will be very helpful to our plans." Barnett reminded him, "It's still best to be cautious. After all, the human heart is the most unpredictable thing in the world." The Earl nodded. "Yes, teacher, I will be careful." Barnett added, "I have some matters to attend to and will be away for a while, but I will still be active in the Northwest. Before I return, you should think carefully about how to get rid of Duke Ferdinand's guards so that I can get close to him." The Earl of Kent placed his hand on his chest. "Please rest assured, teacher, I will definitely find a way." Chapter 104 Canned Food. At 8 a.m. sharp, Eileen arrived at the Lord's Castle. Having been working on semaphore for the army, she had been spending most of her time in the staff headquarters compound or running to the barracks for easier discussions with officers. Once the semaphore system was largely complete, Paul ordered her to move her office inside the castle. A servant led her to her office, a small room containing only a desk, a few chairs, and a bookshelf with a built-in cupboard. Eileen sighed, thinking, what a boss who has absolutely no sense of style. She didn't complain about Paul's stinginess, as she had seen his own office, which was equally monotonous and no better. "Oh well, I'll decorate it myself later," she thought, looking around the room and carefully considering decorating options. Just then, she heard the door next door open and close. She suddenly remembered hearing the servants mention another advisor working in the Lord's mansion, right next door. As a colleague, she should take the initiative to build a good relationship. After all, she wasn't the dazzling princess everyone used to fawn over anymore. Eileen came out and gently knocked on the door of the next room. A melodious "come in" came from inside. Judging from the voice, she must be a lovely girl. That Count isn't her lecher, is he? With this thought in mind, Eileen opened the door and froze. Standing before her was none other than her savior from the jaws of death months ago, Miss Laddie, the scholar and adventurer. Clearly, judging from the scholar's expression, she was also quite surprised. Eileen quickly recovered and said gracefully, "Oh my, I really didn't expect it. So Miss Laddie is the Lord's new advisor." "Hello." Laddie smiled and replied, "Hello, Miss Tiosh. I heard Lord Gleman mention you, and I haven't been able to visit you for several days." "I'm so sorry." Eileen waved her hand and said, "You couldn't find me the other day. I was in the Army's staff headquarters, and people aren't allowed to come and go as they please. Don't be so polite with me in the future. You saved one of my lives, and now you're my colleague. Perhaps this is God's arrangement." Laddie smiled and nodded, her slight worry vanishing completely. When she saved Miss Tiosh from the black-spotted tiger's jaws that day, the other girl thanked her, but for some reason, she always felt that the other girl was arrogant. Now it seems she's not so difficult to get along with after all. "So, you've given up your adventurer's career?" "Yes, these past few years of traveling and working have been exhausting. It's time for a good rest." "Haha, you must have accumulated quite a bit of knowledge during your adventuring career, right? I'd love to learn from you." "Likewise, we're both scholars. I look forward to your guidance in the future." The two chatted happily, finding each other very congenial as women and scholars. About half an hour later, a servant knocked and entered, respectfully saying, "His Excellency the Earl requests that you two advisors meet in the dining room." Eileen asked, "Why the dining room? Is Earl Giles inviting us to lunch?" "But it's still early," the servant said. "I don't know either. His Excellency the Earl simply asked me to invite you." Eileen pouted. "Honestly, Laddie and I were having a wonderful chat." The servant broke out in a cold sweat. He had never seen anyone complain about Earl Giles in public, but he pretended not to hear. Laddie tugged at her sleeve and said, "Betty, let's hurry up. It wouldn't be good to keep Lord Gleman waiting." In just half an hour, they were already calling each other by name. When Eileen and Laddie arrived at the restaurant, they found it already quite crowded. Besides Earl Gleman, there was old Ford, the chief executive of the state council, several officials including Hansel, and high-ranking military officials such as Schroeder and Bryce. "Oh, the two beauties have arrived. Welcome, welcome." Earl Gleman seemed very happy and greeted them warmly. Eileen wanted to complain inwardly. Honestly, with war almost breaking out, he can still maintain such a good mood. After the two female advisors were seated, Paul addressed the group. "I've gathered everyone here today to invite you to try a special dish." He turned to the servants and ordered, "Bring it out." Soon, one strange glass bottle after another was placed in front of everyone. Eileen examined the strange bottle before her closely. It was a wide-mouthed jar made of thick glass, its mouth tightly sealed with a cork and coated with wax. But what was most intriguing was its contents. It appeared to be chopped apples. She glanced at the bottle in front of Laddie beside her. It contained what seemed to be pears. Looking around, she saw that everyone else's bottles contained different things, some vegetables, some meat. Most people stared at the glass bottles with puzzled expressions. Except for a few from the state council, who had heard Paul mention this before, and even Chief Steward Ford and Hansel, who had personally overseen the establishment of the manufacturing plant. This was a different story. Paul happily announced, "Gentlemen, this is canned food, a food processing method that can preserve food for a long time. Now, open them and taste the food inside. Come on, follow me." Paul first scraped off the wax seal with a knife, then picked up the canner next to the glass jar, a spiral metal hook, twisted it forcefully into the cork, and pulled it out. He picked up a fork, speared a piece of beef, and slowly chewed it. It tastes good. Everyone, eat with confidence. The food inside is cooked." Everyone followed the Earl's example, opening the wide-mouthed jars and picking up forks to taste the food inside. "It tastes alright. The broth inside is also very delicious, although it's not as good as freshly made. If it can be preserved for a long time, it's truly an excellent invention." Everyone ate and discussed amongst themselves, especially the military personnel. Schroeder and Bryce began to quietly discuss the importance of canned food for the army's supplies. Eileen ate a piece of apple. This apple tastes a little strange, but it's not bad." "Laddie, what about yours?" Laddie nodded and said, "Mine has very sweet pear flesh inside, and it tastes pretty good." Paul looked at the two female advisors and asked, "You two come from prosperous places. I wonder if this kind of thing would sell well where you are." Laddie said, "If it can be preserved for a long time as you say, there will definitely be no shortage of buyers, especially for those who frequently travel long distances. It will definitely be popular with them." As a former adventurer, she certainly knew what the invention of canned food meant for travelers. Eileen nodded repeatedly. Although she had been pampered since childhood, she had experienced firsthand how quickly delicious foods like meat and vegetables spoiled after traveling to the northwest. When there was no village or shop in sight, she could only eat dry, hard black bread. "Haha. Very good, we are already mass-producing canned food and will soon be selling it to the south," Paul announced happily to everyone. Chapter 105, Are We Not Fighting Anymore? Just as everyone was chatting in the dining room about the bright future of canned goods, a guard rushed in. He approached Paul and whispered, "Lord Gleman, an envoy from Emden requests an audience." Upon hearing this, Paul's previously smiling face instantly turned serious. He addressed the assembled crowd in a somber tone, "Gentlemen, the Kent family has sent someone, likely with the worst possible news." The atmosphere in the dining room instantly turned cold, and everyone's expression became grave. Bryce cracked his knuckles, saying, "Finally here? Gentlemen, let's face this bravely." Paul was actually a little puzzled, because according to the latest intelligence, the Kent family should have fully mobilized their forces yet. Oh well, never mind. He'd deal with whatever came his way. To fully demonstrate his contempt for the enemy, Paul ordered the envoy brought to the dining room. He intended to meet the envoy while munching on canned meat. Soon, the envoy was brought over. Upon arriving at the dining room, he frowned slightly, clearly displeased. The artist actually intended to hold talks while they ate. How utterly rude. Paul asked with an unfriendly expression, "What brings you to Lake Town, sir?" The envoy bowed and said, "I have come on behalf of Lord Kent to convey his hopes for peace." Paul laughed instead of being angry. What part of me does he intend to take this time? Speak plainly, the envoy said. Lord Kent has no ill intentions towards you whatsoever. The unpleasantness of our last meeting was due to a misunderstanding. He asked me to convey his apologies. Our envoy failed to understand Lord Kent's meaning, resulting in some complications and causing you great misunderstanding. Paul was incredulous. What? Did I hear that right? You heard right, the envoy then repeated himself. Paul asked, what about Bardine? The envoy replied, Lord Kent will no longer concern himself with this matter. This was truly bizarre. Paul could hardly believe his ears. He knew exactly what kind of person Malx Kent was. His current behavior was completely out of character. After a few more words, the envoy was quickly taken away to rest, and the group discussed the Kent family's intentions in the dining room. Don't believe a single word Malx Kent says. The Kent family is definitely secretly plotting something shady. Could it be that they're trying to mislead us and launch a surprise attack on Alda while we're off guard? The group was abuzz with discussion, everyone holding a negative view of the Kent family and believing that they absolutely could not afford to let their guard down. Paul instructed, Bernard, see if Chief Cecil has returned to the intelligence department. If he is, call him here. Cecil had been busy and hadn't come to sample the canned food, but he quickly returned with Bernard. As soon as he entered, he hurriedly said to Paul, what a coincidence, Lord Gleman, I just had some important news to report to you. Oh? Then tell me, the Kent family army gathered in Byronburg has disbanded. Paul stood up abruptly. Is that true? Cecil said with a certain look. Absolutely true, Lord Gleman. Paul sighed. Cecil, do you know why I called you here? The Kent family just sent someone, expressing Malx Kent's desire to maintain peace with us, saying that the previous envoy misunderstood his meaning and acted on his own initiative, causing the misunderstanding. Cecil asked, what do you think, sir? Paul said, how could I believe such nonsense? He either has a bigger conspiracy, or he's encountered some trouble, which is why he has to suspend his attacks on us. Cecil nodded in agreement. Your thinking is very wise, sir. Once the Kent family, that hungry wolf, bites its prey, it will never let go until it has torn off a piece of fat. Paul instructed him, so you need to keep a close eye on Emden. Don't miss any movement, and it would be best if you could plant a few people within the Kent family. I will continue to keep an eye on Emden. Planting people within their ranks is a bit difficult, but I will do my best. Cecil agreed. Paul addressed the group, saying, whatever the Kent family's reasons for abandoning the war, the pressure on us has eased somewhat. However, we must remain strong ourselves. We cannot rely on the enemy's good intentions for our safety. We need to continue strengthening our forces. He turned to the officers present, Schroeder, Bryce, and the rest of the troops. I entrust the military affairs to you. Schroeder led everyone to stand up and said, we obey your orders, Your Excellency. Paul turned to everyone and continued, then let's shift our focus back to economic development. Hansel, you should set off for the capital in a few days. Our second batch of grain to present to His Majesty the King is ready. Also, take a batch of canned goods to the kingdom's army to sell. I think they'll definitely like it. Hansel said happily, Lord Gleman, I'll go back and prepare it later. I think you're right. Canned goods seem to be made specifically for military campaigns. Paul thought to himself, you're not wrong. Canned food was invented by Napoleon as a way to solve the problem of preserving military rations, and he rewarded him handsomely for it. Hansel's return this time wasn't just about delivering grain. He also planned to establish a Northwest office in the capital, leaving personnel stationed there to recruit talent and gather intelligence on the kingdom's upper echelons. Several of Cecil's trusted men would accompany him to the capital. And regarding the southern refugees you mentioned, if you have the means and ability to send them over, please do your best. Hansel replied, I will keep a close eye on them. His Majesty will certainly look upon a vassal like you who proactively helps the kingdom solve its problems. Let's hope so. After explaining this matter, Paul announced to everyone, Gentlemen, today is truly a day of continuous good news. The clouds of war hanging over our heads are finally about to dissipate. And the reason I say continuous good news is because I have another piece of good news to share. Yesterday I received a report from the Franklin Port shipyard that our first slup is complete. Many people were puzzled. It was just a ship. Why was the Earl so happy? Steward Ford explained to those who were confused, this kind of ship isn't the kind of galley ship we usually see. Its structure is very different from ordinary ships. It was built for ocean voyages. With it, the ocean trade that the Earl mentioned before can be realized. Everyone suddenly understood. No wonder the Earl was so happy. Being able to trade by sea meant they wouldn't have to worry about the surrounding lords uniting to blockade Arda. The administrative officials discussed the promising trade prospects, while the officers discussed the development of the Navy. Everyone ate their canned food as they talked, and the atmosphere in the dining hall relaxed once again. Only the female advisor, Miss Diaz, showed no sign of joy. Paul's words about Hansel selling canned goods to the kingdom's army had once again reminded her of the rebellion in the south. She thought to herself, sigh. I wonder how things are in the south now, how my father and sister are dealing with this situation. Having been away from home for so long, her resentment towards her father had gradually faded, and Eileen began to worry about her family and the kingdom's situation. After all, she was a princess of this country. Lost in thought, she lost interest in staying in the dining room. She finished the remaining apple, stood up, and bid farewell to Paul. Count, I still have work to do. If there's nothing else, I'll return to my office. Paul replied, very well, Miss Diaz, thank you for your hard work. Eileen bowed slightly to Paul and then turned to leave. Laddie also stood up and said, Lord Gleman, Miss Diaz and I will go back together. We still need to exchange some words. Paul nodded, please, Miss Laddie. Laddie seemed to notice Eileen's change in mood. She took Eileen's hand and went back with her. Watching the two female advisors walk away, Hansel looked puzzled. I feel like I've seen Miss Diaz somewhere before, but where exactly? He racked his brains but couldn't remember, so he shook his head to shake off his doubts and began to focus on the can of beef in front of him. Chapter 106 Trial Voyage. The weather was exceptionally clear, the blue sky merging seamlessly with the ocean in the distance, dotted with fluffy white clouds. A gentle, salty sea breeze blew, invigorating the senses. It was a perfect day for a stroll or picnic along the beach, and indeed, the shore of Fraunhofer harbor was bustling with people, mostly residents of the town, fishermen, merchants, and women with children. But they weren't there for a walk or picnic. Most were gazing at the western sea, occasionally letting out exclamations of admiration or chatting amongst themselves. In the distance, a ship, which the locals considered oddly shaped, was speeding along. This strange ship had no oars, and its length was estimated to be only about 20 meters. A long, prowling mast extended from the front, like a sharp sword piercing forward. On the deck, there was only a single, sloping mast, with 4 triangular sails supported by the prowling mast. 2 square sails hung at the very top of the mast, and a huge fore and aft sail, resembling the dorsal fin of a shark swimming on the surface. This was the sloop, which had just been completed at the shipyard. Its unique shape created a distinctive beauty, captivating the onlookers. Ha ha ha. I love this beauty to death. On the deck of the sloop, former pirate Captain Quake shouted excitedly. He had been entrusted with the crucial task of operating the rudder during this test. Paul had designed the Pollard rudder system from memory, consisting of pulleys and cables. The shipwrights installed this steering device on the sloop according to the diagrams. Now, one person could easily adjust the rudder by turning the rudder on the deck. Under Quake's control, the slooper constantly changed direction, sometimes sailing in a straight line, sometimes circling on the vast sea. Of course, being a sailboat, the coordinated efforts of the sailmen were essential. They had to adjust the sails in time according to the wind direction to ensure the ship's power was not lost. There were more than a dozen people on the deck of the slooper, including the shipyard supervisor Reuben, the old shipwright Benjamin, and naval commander Austin. Reuben was excited. Lord Gleman's model had finally been built into a real thing. Benjamin, on the other hand, was in tears. His long-cherished wish had finally come true. Although the ship was still small, this was just the beginning. Earl Gleman had promised him to build a larger sailboat. Because it was a trial voyage of a new ship, a galley followed behind, just in case anyone was rescued. The wind was strong enough that day, allowing the sloop to reach speeds of over 10 knots. The galleys initially kept pace, but after most of the day's trial run, as the rowers ran out of energy and with Quake's erratic maneuvers, they gradually fell behind. Some sailors made faces and yelled at the galleys lagging far behind, creating a lively scene on deck. Among this excited group, only Austin remained calm, arms crossed as if deep in thought. Suddenly, a sailor with binoculars shouted to him, "Signal from shore." "Turn back immediately," Austin immediately commanded. "Return," Quake grumbled dejectedly. "I haven't had enough fun yet," but his months of military service made him unable to disobey orders. With a turn of the helm, the sloop rounded a bend and headed towards the shipyard harbor. More than 2 months later, Paul returned to Fland Harbor. Accompanying him were several government officials, including Hansel, Chief of Staff Schroeder, Minister of Equipment Kelly, Minister of Logistics Ron, and 2 female advisors, Betty and Laddie. Many were eager to see the new ship the Earl had mentioned. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the mayor and others who came to greet him at the city gate, he led his men straight to the shipyard. When he arrived, the sloop had already set sail for sea trials. It wasn't that they were waiting for him, he himself had given the order. Once the ship was built, just let him know, and then everything would proceed according to plan, without waiting for his arrival to begin sea trials. Time was extremely tight, and any delay was unacceptable. Fortunately, the Kent family had temporarily cancelled their plans to wage war, so he received the news and rushed over, bringing with him 20 naval cannons. When he saw the silhouette of the sailing ship on the distant sea, he was incredibly excited and couldn't wait to go aboard and see it for himself. He had those remaining on shore send the signal to return, and soon the sloop sailed toward the shipyard's harbor. "Sir Giles," Austin gave Paul a crisp military salute. Paul smiled and returned the salute. "Thank you for your hard work, Commander," Austin said modestly. "Not at all, it was Supervisor Reuben and Master Benjamin who worked the hardest. Haha, I won't forget these 2 heroes," Paul said, shaking hands firmly with the 2 men beside Austin and thanking them. "I also want to thank you, sir." Old Benjamin held Paul's hand tightly for a long time. Paul joked with him, "Master Benjamin, from now on, you can build as many ships as you want here, as long as you don't find it tiring." Benjamin repeatedly replied, "Not tiring, not tiring, how could I find it tiring?" Then Paul patted Reuben on the shoulder. "Come on, Supervisor, show me around the ship," Reuben said proudly. "Lord Gleman, I can't wait to show you this ship, you'll definitely love it." After boarding the sloop, Paul carefully examined every part and was very satisfied. He asked, "Gentlemen, does this beauty have a name?" Reuben said, "Sir, this ship is of great significance, only you are qualified to name it." That was a really good compliment, and Paul said with a smile, "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Paul racked his brains, trying to think of a name that would elevate the ship's prestige. Finally, he could only think to himself, sigh. "I really have no talent for naming things. Oh well, simplicity is the best, I've decided." Paul pointed forcefully at the sea and shouted, "Name this ship Hope, she represents her hope of conquering the sea." Clap. 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 The surrounding people applauded. Austin shook his head and said, as expected of Lord Giles, "The name Hope is perfectly fitting." Supervisor Reuben nodded in agreement. Indeed, even the Earl's names are so meaningful, so profound." Hearing his subordinate's words, the Earl felt a surge of pride welling up within him. He waved his hand. "You must continue building new dry docks and expand the shipyard's capacity. We must build on a massive scale." On a massive scale, Austin, Reuben, Benjamin, and the others were overjoyed. Chapter 107 Naval Gun Test Firing. Paul brought with him 12 naval guns, including 2 12-pounder guns, 6 6-pounder guns, and 4 swivel guns. Combined with the 2 6-pounder guns and 4 swivel guns previously used for training, the Navy now possessed 18 guns. Swivel guns were small-caliber guns mounted on 360-degree rotating supports, firing shotgun shells and small cannonballs. They were very lightweight and flexible, used to support boarding operations and compensate for blind spots and broadside gunnery. During the construction of the Hope, gun ports were pre-installed on both sides of the upper deck. Because it was the first ship build, the number of guns that could be mounted was unclear, so only 8 gun ports were opened, 4 on each side. After returning from sea trials, Austin directed the sailors to receive the new guns brought by Paul. The 4 6-pounder guns were immediately loaded onto the ship, along with a crate of shells and several barrels of gunpowder. Installing naval guns was no simple task. The ship's limited space required the use of ropes and pulleys to construct a reasonable recoil mechanism. The Navy experimented extensively on land before finally developing a feasible solution. Let's go, take me for a spin at sea. We can fire a couple of shots and see what happens, Paul eagerly ordered after the sailors had set up the guns. The sailors hoisted the sails, and several sailors worked together to push the anchor winch and hoist the anchor. Propelled by the wind, the Hope slowly sailed out of the harbor once more. Many of those who had come with Paul were on a ship for the first time, excitedly looking around as if the Hope were a novel toy. This is the feeling I've been looking for, sailing against the sea breeze towards the boundless ocean. Paul felt as if he were in the age of exploration on Earth. In a corner of the deck, two female advisors were whispering to each other. Eileen mused, so a boat can go this fast without oars. Laddie chimed in, yes, a large ship with so many sails, propelled entirely by wind power, is truly rare. As an adventurer, she was quite worldly, but the boats she'd seen before that didn't rely on oars were usually small vessels sailing along coastlines or inland rivers, carrying only a few people. Eileen said mysteriously, let me tell you, besides the paper, porcelain, and canned food we use every day, this Earl Gleman has come up with quite a few other things. Her womanly instincts made her eager to share her observations with her companion. His army has something very terrifying. She suddenly stopped, remembering the confidentiality agreement she'd signed. Ugh. This feeling is awful. Eileen recalled the cannon and musket firing scenes she'd witnessed during the semaphore drills. She'd wanted to describe them to Lottie. The powerful firepower and sheer force of the weapons had left a deep impression on her. If only we could equip the kingdom's army with a large number of these weapons, the southern rebels would surely be routed in the face of their power. She had thought this to herself more than once, wondering if she should reveal her princess identity and request a lord to contribute the manufacturing technology to the royal family. However, her fear of a marriage alliance repeatedly dissuaded her from this idea. Laddie tilted her head and asked in confusion, what's so scary? Her gesture was quite adorable. Eileen smiled brightly and said, I can't say now. But you should see it soon. Before setting sail, she had heard Paul say, fire a couple of shots and see, and saw the 4 cannons deployed on the deck. This trial voyage would likely involve cannon firing. Sure enough, a moment later she heard Paul order, sail the ship to that rocky cliff. We'll test the effectiveness of the ship's cannons. Austin immediately relayed Paul's order to Quick, and the Hope turned its bow and headed towards the rocky cliff on the shore. The gunners began loading the cannons, quickly filing the 2 6-pounder guns positioned on the port side. Soon, the Hope was about 500 meters from the cliff, its port side facing the precipice. Austin shouted, gunners, prepare. Eileen immediately tugged at Laddie's sleeve, reminding her, it'll be very loud, cover your ears. Laddie did as she was told, covering her ears tightly with her hands. Looking at the others on the ship, they all covered their ears as well. Fire. As soon as Austin finished speaking, 2 gunners lit the ignition ports of their respective cannons. With a deafening roar from the cannons, everyone felt the ship shudder violently. Looking ahead, the power of the ship's cannons at this distance was impressive. Rocks flew everywhere on the cliff, and one shell struck a large, protruding rock, shattering it into pieces. Wow, that's amazing. Laddie, witnessing cannon fire for the first time, was somewhat stunned. Eileen explained to her, this is a cannon, capable of long-range firing like a ballista or catapult. Laddie thought to herself, its power and range far surpass those of ballistae and catapults. She recalled the day Paul recaptured Fland Harbor. Thunderous sounds echoed outside the town, and soon after, the Alda army breached the city walls. The enormous noise that day must have been from this weapon. Such power could indeed blast open the city gates. No wonder the pirates' defenses were ineffective. With 4 openings on each side of the ship, and cannons mounted on them all, how powerful this ship must be. Against a galley of similar size, a single volley of cannon fire, if all hit, would leave several oarsmen alive. Laddie also understood that Alda faced a threat from the neighboring Kent family, but Earl Gleman hadn't shown any sign of panic. Was this the strength he relied on? The port cannons fired 3 volleys before ceasing fire. Austin shouted, check the hull. The simultaneous firing of just 2 cannons could damage the ship, meaning the Hope would be a failure. The lower deck is fine, the foredeck is fine. As reports came in, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Austin handed the binoculars to Paul, who carefully examined the rock face. This power should be enough to deal with those fragile pirate ships, the naval commander confirmed. Paul, remembering something, turned to Hansel, only to find the head of the agricultural ministry in a very bad state. Hansel looked shaken, gripping a railing tightly. Seeing Paul looking at him, He said with a mournful face, "I'm sorry, this is my first time going out to sea." "Oh dear, sir, this isn't really going out to sea yet, we're just going around the harbor a few times. Why don't you wait a few more days, until everything is ready, and then head south on the Hope?" Hansel quickly waved his hand. No, I'll head south by land this time. I can't afford to delay Lord Gryle's business." Laughter rippled across the deck. Chapter 108 666 Plan. A crowd had gathered on the beach to watch the new ship's trial voyage, including Bennett Todd and several of his merchant friends. He asked his friends, "Did you all see it clearly? That ship doesn't seem to have a single oar." "You're not mistaken, it really doesn't have a single oar. It's entirely powered by the wind," the salt merchant Godwin confirmed. "I wonder if the Lord's summons to us this time is related to this ship." "What, didn't Lord Gleman mention establishing an ocean trading company before?" "But at that time, there weren't suitable ships for ocean voyages, so it was shelved. Now this kind of ship has been built, we don't know how well it performs yet," the merchants discussed animatedly on the beach. In the afternoon, the city hall once again summoned merchants from Franklin Port and the surrounding area, and sure enough, Earl Gleman mentioned ocean trading again. "After the second ship is built, I will conduct an ocean trial voyage," Paul announced to the merchants. "The destination is tentatively set as Bamo Port within the kingdom's borders. If possible, we will sail south towards Horn Bay." Bamo Port is located at the mouth of the Seine River, the kingdom's largest river, from which one can sail upstream all the way to the royal capital, Crystal Castle. Soon, someone asked, "Lord Gleman, will you sell your ships to his private merchants?" "Of course, the more you buy, the happier I am. However, it must be after the army's needs are met. We must have a strong navy to ensure the safety of the sea route. You don't want to encounter pirates after setting sail, do you? You can place your orders at the shipyard now. First come, first served." Hansel, the head of the state council, will soon depart for the royal capital. You can go south with him yourself or send a representative to investigate the market conditions in the south. Upon hearing this, the merchants were excited and eager to make a fortune. In Arda and Berdine, under the jurisdiction of the state council, over a dozen private factories have sprung up with Paul's technical support. These factories, either wholly owned or joint ventures, produce paper, porcelain, and canned goods. Several salt fields have also been established along the coast, and salt prices in the local area and surrounding territories have begun to decline. Naturally, the private entrepreneurs who invested in these industries have made a fortune and are eagerly anticipating expanding their markets. To Paul's great surprise, when he invented canning, he followed the instructions from his memory that it should be done with wide-mouthed glass bottles. However, the private canneries had replaced the glass bottles with earthenware jars, significantly reducing costs. This was quite an innovation, proving the formidable profit-seeking nature of merchants. To prevent his own cannery from being phased out, he ordered that earthenware jars also be used for canning. While Paul was painting a rosy picture for the merchants, a military conference was also taking place in a heavily guarded naval base. Those present included Chief of Staff Schroeder, Naval Commander Austin, Secretary of Armament Kelly, Secretary of Logistics Ron, and Battalion Commander Bryce, who had just arrived at Fland Harbor. "Chief of Staff, this is a draft development outline," Austin said respectfully, handing a stack of papers to Schroeder. Schroeder took it and carefully reviewed it. He frowned and passed the outline around for others to read. Bryce, the first to receive the outline, glanced at it and said in a slightly trembling voice, "Isn't the Navy's appetite a bit too big, expanding to 600 men in the next 2 years, 60 cannons of various sizes, at least 6 sailing warships?" Bryce slammed his hand on the table, quite indignant. "Austin, are you kidding me? The entire army only has 8 cannons that can truly be called artillery." Austin pointed out to him, "Look closely, many of those 60 cannons are small gadgets like swivel guns." Bryce shook his head. "That's still too many," Austin said. "This is the result of our careful consideration. It's quite conservative. 600 men, 60 cannons, 6 warships. We call it the 666 plan," he explained to everyone. "The Earl has ordered the Navy to open the sea route to the south as soon as possible and ensure its safety. With these few galleys and a few hundred new recruits equipped only with swords and a few muskets, how can they possibly eliminate the pirates, big and small? Along the way, the Navy must ensure that at any given time, there are 4 ships patrolling, 1 training, and 1 undergoing maintenance." Bryce asked, "Training is understandable, but ships need maintenance after they're built." "Of course, Austin patiently explained to the group of landlubbers, building a qualified warship takes a long time, but in order to equip them as quickly as possible, our first batch of warships was inevitably rushed. For example, the Hope, for instance, was built in just over a month. Many parts of the timber weren't properly dried, which will cause the hull to corrode quickly. Therefore, we need to frequently inspect the warships. Of course, even for those qualified ships, regular maintenance is necessary. Then what about this Marine Corps? Don't we already have our army? Having a group of personnel proficient in land warfare is necessary. Pirates won't be foolish enough to float on the sea and let us bombard them with artillery. If things get bad, they'll likely run ashore. And their strongholds are either on islands or in some coastal outpost. We must go ashore to wipe them out. If we then go to notify the army for coordination, it might delay our operations. The naval commander laid out a series of reasons that left no room for rebuttal. He concluded by adding, "You all understand Alda's urgent need for long-distance trade. Once trade begins, the State Council can collect more taxes, which will allow us to allocate more military funds, not just for the Navy, but also for the Army." This last statement was indeed a very promising prospect. After pondering for a while, Schroeder said to Austin, "I agree to this plan in principle, but the final decision rests with His Excellency the Earl. The current resource allocation is heavily skewed towards the Navy. The Army, with over 1,000 men, is only equipped with 8 cannons, while the Navy, with only a few hundred men, is equipped with 10. Many Army officers are very unhappy about this." Austin glanced at the still sulking Bryce and thought to himself, "There's one right here, even in the face of Emden's threat, this bias hasn't changed. Many soldiers in the newly expanded 3rd Battalion are only equipped with wooden sticks. Fortunately, God has blessed us. The Kent family doesn't intend to use force for the time being." Schroeder stared at Austin and said, enunciating each word clearly, "Therefore, the Navy must produce convincing results." Austin stood up, saluted everyone present, and said firmly, "Please rest assured, Lord, Chief of Staff, and everyone present, we are already working with the Intelligence Department to investigate and compile intelligence on various pirate groups. We will be taking action soon. I guarantee that in a year, only our army will remain in the Northwest Bay." Schroeder stood up, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Excellent. To support the Navy's operations, the Equipment Department will build a new arsenal in Franklin Harbor to provide the Navy with the necessary guns, gunpowder, and other weapons." This was truly good news. Austin said excitedly, "We will certainly not disappoint Lord Grile's high expectations. Thank you for the reward from Destined to Be. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels." Chapter 109 Pirate Remnants. After its successful sea trials, the Hope was quickly and officially accepted by the Navy. It was ultimately equipped with 8 broadside guns, 4 on each side, and 4 swivel guns, and had a crew of 50. Given that Quake was relatively the most knowledgeable about sea affairs in the Navy, and after a period of observation, no disloyalty was found in him, he was appointed captain of the Hope with Paul's approval, his rank jumping several levels to become a temporary lieutenant. Quake was deeply grateful. After several months in the Navy, he gradually realized that Earl Gleman was not the cruel and ruthless lord he expected, and he began to feel a desire to serve. Now that a great opportunity was before him, he was determined to seize it. He led his crew in rigorous training every day, even sleeping on the ship, quickly becoming familiar with every inch of the new vessel. After spending a few days in Flanders, Paul planned to return to Lake Town. Before leaving, Austin explained his long-planned anti-piracy operation to Paul and Schroeder. In a conference room at the naval base, a huge sand table was laid out before everyone, depicting the entire northwestern bay's coastline, including islands of all sizes. Of course, limited by current technology, the sand table wasn't very precise, but it was sufficient for the Navy's needs. In summary, our plan is, Austin pointed at the sand table with a thin stick, with the help of the militia in the coastal towns, and so on, the first target to eliminate is Loach Garden. Since the Shark Gang was destroyed, he has become the largest pirate force in the Northwest Bay. Wait a minute, Paul interrupted Austin, stroking his chin and asking, "Loach? Why does that nickname sound so familiar?" Standing behind Austin, Quake coughed awkwardly and said, "Lord Griles, When I was still a pirate, I wanted Garden to cooperate with me in attacking Lacquer town, but he ran away halfway through when things went wrong, and then I was captured by you." Paul then remembered, so it was that guy who slipped away. "No wonder his nickname is Loach," Quake said. "Yes, he is very cunning and good at changing his stance depending on the situation." Austin continued, "They are very good at choosing our weak points to attack, and it's also my fault for being too incompetent, allowing them to come ashore and succeed several times." Paul warned him, "There's a high chance he's planted a mole in our army. You'd better be careful." "Quake, don't overthink it. I'm not targeting you, my lord. I'm already suspecting it, and I'll investigate thoroughly. According to our current intelligence, the Mudfish Gang doesn't have a fixed base, and all the members of this pirate group are skilled in sailing. Tracking them won't be easy." Paul asked, "Can't our ships catch up with them?" "They're using galleys, aren't they?" Austin admitted. "Yes, but they might also have some unknown modification technology that can greatly increase the speed of their ships. Even if they're caught red-handed by our patrols, they can still leave us far behind." Quake added, "I've never heard of the Mudfish Gang having that ability before." Paul said, somewhat displeased, "I didn't come here to hear you complain about how difficult it is." Austin immediately changed the subject. "Of course, my lord, all that is in the past, because we have the Hope. No matter how fast their ships are, they're still propelled by manpower. While our Hope can sail continuously as long as there's wind. So we don't need to catch them immediately. As long as we can keep a close distance, we can exhaust their rowers and eventually catch up with them. Is it really okay to take a newly developed ship that's only been tested for a few days and go all out against pirates? And what if they have many ships? Wouldn't we be outnumbered?" Although he knew that sailing warships were the right way, Paul was a little unsure about the Hope, which was still a test model. Quake immediately stepped forward and patted his chest, assuring him, "Please rest assured, Your Excellency, my sailors and I have absolute confidence in the Hope. We will definitely be able to hold out until the other captains come to our aid." Thinking of the 8 cannons and 4 swivel guns equipped in the Hope, Quake felt that he could even confront the sea monster Edward. He recalled the awe he felt when he first encountered cannons. These weapons were practically made for naval warfare. With enough cannons, he could blast the enemy to smithereens from afar, even avoiding boarding maneuvers. The group continued their discussion for a while, and finally Paul looked at Austin and said, "The affairs of the sea are entrusted to you. Besides eliminating the pirates, you must also expedite the opening of the southern route. Send the second ship south as soon as it's launched." Austin and the captain saluted in unison. "Yes, Your Excellency, please rest assured." Paul suddenly remembered something and said, "I will leave Miss Diaz, the language advisor, to help you improve your maritime communication methods. She has already helped the army develop a set of flag signals, which has proven to be very effective after testing." Austin nodded. "That would be perfect. Thank you, Your Excellency." Houses were engulfed in flames, the cries of men begging for mercy and the weeping of women and children mingling together. This was a coastal village, located in territory next to Arda, now being ravaged by pirates. Numerous pirates searched the village, packing their loot into wooden crates and loading them onto their ships. The remaining pirates gathered the villagers in one place and began selecting slaves. One pirate spotted a teenage boy, pushed through the crowd, and lifted him up. The boy was completely disoriented, trembling all over, but the woman beside him suddenly clung tightly to his leg. "Please, don't take my son away. He's my only family left," she pleaded, her eyes filled with tears and terror. "Let go." The pirate holding the boy glared at the woman and shouted. The woman continued to beg the pirate, still clinging tightly to her son's leg, refusing to let go. The pirate grew impatient, his left hand holding a knife lashing out, and the woman fell into a pool of blood. "Mom!" The boy, held captive by the pirates, cried out in anguish. "You devils!" He bit the pirate's arm hard. For someone his size, this was the limit of his resistance. The pirate, wincing in pain, cursed him as a little brat, then used the hilt of his knife to knock the boy unconscious, dragging him to the feet of another companion. These young boys, their minds still developing and lacking the ability to resist, were the best candidates for slavery. Once on the pirate ship, if they could quickly adapt to this cesspool, they would become backup pirates and eventually grow into real pirates. If they couldn't, they would be slaves for life. The other villagers sat trembling on the ground, watching all this. No one dared to stand up and resist, only praying that misfortune wouldn't befall them. The pirates, selecting slaves, once again came into the crowd, looking for their next slave. Chapter 110 The Ambition of Loach. On a nearby hilltop, Loch Gadden stood smugly watching the fishing village ablaze with fire. Just then, a miner leader ran from the village and reported, "Boss, we've almost looted everything." Gadden nodded and said, "Gather everyone together, let's retreat. It wouldn't be good if we attracted those meddlesome blue-striped dogs." "Yes, sir," the miner leader replied and ran back into the village. The establishment of the navy caused the pirates considerable headaches, especially those in the waters near Arda, making them live in constant fear even when going ashore. After Lord Paul Gleman of Arda killed his father's killer, Shark, the other pirates assumed that their lord would stop there and continue to abide by the treaty between the Northwestern lords and the pirates, turning a blind eye to their occasional raids. Who would have thought that this scoundrel Shark would stir up such a hornet's nest? The hot-blooded young lord seemed to hate all the pirates at once. Since the public trial, a piece of news slowly spread throughout the seas: Earl Gryman was going to exterminate all the pirates in the Northwest Bay. This wasn't boasting. Earl Gryman had specifically established a navy to deal with them. Initially, due to insufficient strength, the navy didn't actively launch a campaign to wipe them out, but the pirates still felt the pressure. Their operations along the coast of Alda began to falter. Previously, the pirates would rest for a couple of days after landing in the plundered areas, but now that wasn't possible. They had to flee immediately, otherwise the Alda navy would arrive on the scene and crush them. The pirates had considered a head-on confrontation, but their opponents were equipped with powerful weapons. Often, before they even reached their targets, they would hear a series of strange cracking sounds, and a large number of their own men would fall. Afterward, they would inevitably scatter in disarray. The pirates finally understood how Shark had been defeated. They had no choice but to change their strategy, no longer staying in the plundered areas to rest, but instead resorting to looting and running away. But this method gradually became ineffective. The Alda Navy dispatched specialists to the coastal villages to reorganize, train, and command the local militia. The militia, initially formed spontaneously by the villagers, were ineffective and no match for the pirates. However, after naval training, they slowly gained the courage and ability to fight the pirates. Given the long coastline and the Navy's inability to disperse its forces too much, Austin, upon taking office, oversaw the construction of a series of coastal defense projects. He convened representatives from the coastal villages in Flanders Harbor and proposed his plan. Each village would build a simple fortress large enough to accommodate all its inhabitants. Smaller villages would simply enclose themselves with wooden walls, not necessarily overly sturdy, but the defenses should be able to withstand at least a day and a night. Each village would also build a beacon tower on its own coastline, stationing local militia to guard it and organize patrols along the shore. Once a suspicious vessel approached, the beacon would be lit, alerting the villagers to take refuge in the fortress, while the militia prepared for defense. Then they waited for the main naval force to arrive, refraining from reckless battles no matter how the enemy tried to lure them in. By September, coastal defenses in villages and towns were gradually completed and proved highly effective. Although some valuables were still stolen after pirate attacks, the number of people abducted decreased significantly. The Navy, upon receiving the beacon fires, immediately mobilized, intercepting many pirate groups that had not yet retreated, and inflicting heavy losses. As the militia's training improved, they learned to assess enemy and friendly forces, enabling them to deal with smaller pirate groups at appropriate times. Arda territory gradually became a no-landing zone for Northwest Bay pirates, and the pirate groups shifted their focus to other territories. However, fishing boats and merchant ships remained under threat from pirates. With the land threat largely eliminated, Austin began to turn his attention to the sea. 6 fully trained galleys began patrolling the seas, escorting civilian vessels. Although the sailors were mostly inexperienced, the presence of muskets and grenades made them an unstoppable force for the pirates. These small fry, abandoned by Edward, were only capable of boarding and hand-to-hand combat, and lacking ranged weapons like bows and crossbows. They were completely outmatched by firearms. Thus, the Arda Navy finally became a force to be reckoned with among pirates. Their reputation spread, and their territory expanded, sometimes even crossing the border to teach neighboring pirates a lesson. However, one pirate group was a relative exception, the Eel Garden Gang, who gave Austin a headache. The blue-striped Drugs Garden referred to the Arda Navy, a nickname derived from their white and blue sailor uniforms, which had become their symbol. Of the 4 pirate gangs that were originally ahead of the Mudfish Gang, the Shark Gang and the Quake Gang were wiped out by Gryman's army, who personally led the operation. The other two gangs were also caught off guard by the Alden Navy when they landed and were severely weakened. Only the Mudfish gang, thanks to its caution and cunning, gradually grew stronger after suffering a few minor losses. Unlike its rabid counterparts who only knew how to rob, Gaddon had many informants stationed on land. These informants were either small merchants traveling through various villages and towns or local residents who had been coerced or bribed. They would occasionally pass on very useful information to him through special channels, such as the strength of defenses in a certain area, the quality and number of militia, and whether there was any naval activity nearby. With this information, the Mudfish gang boldly pulled off several deals that made the Alden Navy lose face. Intimidated by the Navy's reputation, the Mudfish gang only loaded during these operations, sparing the lives of the local inhabitants. There was a rumor among the pirates that the Lord of Alda would show leniency to pirates who hadn't killed anyone, whether true or not. The point was to avoid making too much of a grudge. However, they were far less lenient with villages and towns and other territories, continuing their arson and murder as before. The reason Gaddon dared to act this way even after Alda became a pirate no-go zone was to demonstrate to the other pirates that there was still a pirate group in the Northwest Bay that could keep Griles in check, thereby building his prestige among the pirates. This was because he was gradually developing a dream, or rather, an ambition, to unify the pirate forces of the Northwest Bay and become the second Edward. At first, it was just a thought, fleeting in his mind, which he would laugh at himself for, a pipe dream. But as his power grew, he couldn't suppress this thought any longer, and it eventually evolved into ambition. And a recent encounter with a mysterious figure made him even more determined to pursue this ambition. Chapter 111 Anomaly. Gaddon recalled the scene from 2 months ago. After the destruction of the two largest gangs, Shark and Quake, the ranking of pirate forces in the Northwest Bay was bound to change. Amidst this chaos, Gaddon made a crucial decision, to observe and wait. He gathered his gang's leaders at a temporary base and announced this decision. From now on, keep a low profile. We'll resume our previous activities once the situation stabilizes, one leader asked, but boss, now that Shark and Quake are finished, if we can seize the opportunity, we might become the largest pirate force in the Northwest Bay. With our current strength, if we cower now, wouldn't we be handing over our ranking to someone else? The leader's tone was slightly dissatisfied, as if questioning Gaddon's leadership abilities. But Gaddon scoffed at his words. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Lord Paul Gleman of Arda is riding high right now. Going after such a flashy but meaningless ranking now is just asking to be his target. He stared at the underling and said, if you want to compete, you can go out on your own, but don't drag your brothers to their deaths. The underling shrank back, clearly frightened by Gaddon's words. He quickly explained, Chief Gaddon, I was just offering my suggestion. Hell, I know my place. You'll always be my boss, Gaddon snorted, assuming the underling wouldn't dare harbor any disloyalty. Disperse. I need to think about our future strategy. Gaddon waved his hand, dismissing his men. Everyone rose to take their leave, and soon the room fell silent. Only one person remained, the underling who had objected to his decision. Gaddon narrowed his eyes. What are you still doing here? The man before him seemed rather strange. This junior leader was usually taciturn, always obeying orders without question. Today, he dared to object to his decisions? The junior leader didn't answer, but instead cracked his neck and straightened up in his seat, a complete change from his previous timid demeanor. Gaddon felt offended and slightly annoyed, deciding to teach this arrogant subordinate a lesson. However, the next second, he felt as if he were in an ice cellar, involuntarily shivering. The weather had only just turned cool, the temperature couldn't possibly be this low. Looking at his subordinate, he saw a strange smile on the man's face, staring directly at the pirate leader. Gaddon sensed danger, like being watched by a venomous snake. He quietly reached behind his back with his right hand, touching the poison dagger at his waist, and felt a little more at ease. In those few seconds, a series of terrifying thoughts flashed through Gaddon's mind. Is this guy planning a mutiny? Have his trusted men on guard outside already been killed? Judging from his confident demeanor, has he made ample preparations? I'm usually so cautious, yet I still managed to be caught off guard. How did the other side prepare so thoroughly? There wasn't a single sign or indication. Once he gives the signal, a whole bunch of traitors will rush in and kill me, Gaddon thought to himself as he drew his dagger a short distance. At this close range, he was confident he could throw it accurately at his opponent. With a potent poison on the dagger, Even a slight scratch would be enough for the traitor to slowly die in agony. HMPH. If you want my life, then trade yours for it. Gadon growled coldly. Swordfish, answer my question. I don't want to ask a second time. The subordinate nicknamed Swordfish still didn't answer. Just as Gadon, enraged, was about to try calling out to his trusted men outside, whose fate was unknown, the man made a move. Clap. 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 The Swordfish clapped its hands. Gadon took this clapping as a signal to his accomplices, gripping the dagger on his back tightly, his muscles tense, waiting for someone to break down the door. Let's fight to the death. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. No one came in, nothing happened. A fleeting look of confusion crossed Gadon's face, but the Swordfish caught it. Ho ha ho ha, the Swordfish laughed loudly. Gadon, whose attention had been fixed on it, finally noticed something unusual. The laughter wasn't the Swordfish's. It seemed to be mocking him. Gadon felt ashamed, and his fear grew stronger. Although the worst he had anticipated hadn't happened, this bizarre situation was 100 times worse than a large group of traitors storming in. Who is this Swordfish? How did it impersonate a swordfish? Where was the real Swordfish? What gave it the audacity to act so recklessly in front of him? I can't see what weapons he's carrying. Gadon forced himself to calm down and asked in a deep voice, Sir, who exactly are you? The Swordfish, still seated, visibly startled, then recovered and asked with a smile, What, have you been seen through? HMPH. Swordfish wouldn't be so bold in front of me. Of course, what betrays you most is your laughter just now. I'm very familiar with Swordfish's voice. Gadon explained how he had seen through the other's disguise. Swordfish clapped his hands a second time and said, Oops, a moment of carelessness, my voice gave me away. I was hoping to keep you guessing for a while longer, but now I can't laugh at you anymore. I guess you really live up to your nickname, Mudfish? Your strategy of not sticking your neck out just now really lives up to the name. Gadon questioned, Who are you? What's your purpose here? Where's the real Swordfish? Swordfish met Gadon's gaze, a slight glint in his eyes. He calmly held up 3 fingers and said, These are 3 questions. Let's make a deal. For every question I answer, you'll agree to one. Screw your deal. Before Swordfish could finish, a dagger flew towards his face with lightning speed. Gadon threw his weapon away forcefully, his movements as swift as lightning. The moment the dagger left his hand, he felt a sense of disbelief. When had he become so reckless, attacking without even investigating the other party's background? The feeling just now was incredibly subtle. Almost as soon as the thought of killing the Swordfish crossed his mind, his body acted on its own, giving his brain no chance to process it. Oh well, might as well kill it, he thought. I don't want to get involved in any trouble. Gadon was very confident in his poison dagger and its throwing accuracy. However, something completely unexpected happened. The dagger struck the opponent precisely between the eyebrows, and then, with a thud, it fell to the ground. Chapter 112 Transactions. The sharp dagger touched the Swordfish's forehead but couldn't penetrate any further, falling to the ground with a thud. The pirate captain could hardly believe his eyes. If it were any other accident, he, who always kept some tricks up his sleeve, had many follow-up measures. But faced with something so logical, he, who prided himself on his quick wit, panicked instantly, standing there dumbfounded, staring at his opponent with an incredulous expression. Ouch, you're really strong. You've ruined a perfectly good mask. The Swordfish rubbed his forehead, then pinched the edge of the skin and pulled it down, slowly tearing off a piece of skin. Gadon immediately understood. The other man was using a human skin mask to disguise himself as a swordfish. He had seen such masks before. They required peeling off the face of the person being impersonated and then using some kind of secret technique to create. This meant the real swordfish had been killed. Wait a minute. A thin layer of human skin couldn't protect against a dagger thrown with such force. Otherwise, the knight's armor would be a joke. He stared intently at the other man's forehead. There wasn't a single scratch. It seemed the man had truly withstood his attack solely with his bare body. After the human skin mask was completely removed, the man ripped off his hair, complaining, "Wearing a wig is so uncomfortable." The mysterious man's face was fully revealed, an extraordinary face, a completely bald head without a single hair, and strange tattoos on his face. The patterns formed by the tattoos seemed to possess a strange magic, making one inexplicably uneasy at first glance. Now, this strange face displayed a mocking expression, as if the pirate captain before him was a pet to be toyed with at will. This person is very sinister, Gardner secretly reminded himself. The situation was now completely under the other man's control. He calmed down and asked again, "Who exactly are you? What is your purpose here?" This time, the question finally received an answer. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Barnett, and I am a member of the Secret Society. I am here to discuss a deal with you." The Secret Society? Never heard of it. What a strange organization's name. Gardner strained his memory, searching for any trace of the Secret Society, but found nothing. As if sensing his thoughts, the man named Barnett waved him off, saying, "Don't waste your energy trying to remember. Our organization has never shown itself to mortals." Mortals? The Secret Society? An absurd thought flashed through the pirate captain's mind. Could this man be a wizard? How could that be? Wait. It wasn't impossible. That knife he just threw would have killed any normal human. The legendary thing was actually appearing before him, yet Gardner felt no fear, though his heart pounded wildly. This was fucking incredibly exciting. "Hell, you've got guts. Looks like you're cautious, not cowardly," the man said. This mysterious Barnett could even read his mind. Gardner was once again astonished by the man's unfathomable depth. He asked cautiously, "If you don't mind, may I address you as Master Barnett?" Barnett chuckled. "Master? It seems you've already guessed my identity." "Yes, I am indeed a wizard, though we prefer to call ourselves magicians." The other party readily admitted it, so Gardner continued, "So, Master Barnett, what kind of deal have you come to discuss?" Gardner's previously anxious heart eased somewhat. Since the other party was here to discuss a deal, he probably didn't have any other intentions. Thinking about it carefully, this Barnett had been lurking by his side for who knows how long. Given his current unfathomable demeanor, if he had any ill intentions towards him, why would he wait until now? Barnett said, "We'd like you to do a small favor for us, and we'll pay you up front. How about that?" Gardner asked. "A small favor? What small favor? To split the older kingdom?" Gardner was speechless for a moment. Excuse my bluntness, is that a small favor?" But Barnett arrogantly said, "HMPH. Compared to what we ultimately want to do, this is indeed a small matter." Gardner scoffed. "Master Barnett, you've come to the wrong person. With just my 200-odd men and a few dilapidated ships, any minor lord could easily leave me bloodied and battered." Barnett waved his hand and said, "I already said we'd pay you up front. Why don't you ask what the payment is? Knowing might give you more confidence." "All right, what kind of payment do you want in advance?" Barnett curled his lips and slowly said, "To help you unify the Northwest Bay and become the second Edward." "How about that payment?" The pirate captain's heart pounded. Becoming a sea tyrant like Edward was every pirate's ultimate dream. Commanding all the pirate groups in the Northwest Sea and forcing the major lords to acknowledge his sphere of influence, Edward's actions were unprecedented and will undoubtedly leave a significant mark on history. Gardner, of course, also aspired to Edward's historical status, either to be remembered for good or for evil. That was his mindset when he joined the pirate profession. However, so far, it remained just a thought. "So? With Edward's strength, you should be able to contend with the lords of the Northwest, right?" Barnett added. "We're not asking you to go ashore and confront the kingdom of Waldo head-on. We simply want you to tie down the kingdom's army at sea and along the coast, and help transport soldiers and supplies by water. We've already arranged things on the inland." If he could achieve Edward's accomplishments, these tasks wouldn't be difficult to accomplish, but Gardner had some doubts. Could this person or the organization behind him really help him realize this dream? It seemed highly unlikely. Perhaps they would use legendary magic or witchcraft, since the other party had already admitted to being a wizard. "I know you're doubting our ability to pay this reward." Barnett, with a knowing look, took out a small pill and placed it on the table in front of Gardner. "How about it? Dare to try one? It will bring some unexpected changes to your body, changes that will give you a preliminary assessment of the Secret Society's strength." Gardner reached out and picked up the pill on the table, examining it closely. The pill was entirely red, and he couldn't tell what it was made of. He hesitated, unsure whether to take it or not. Seeing the pirate captain's hesitation, Barnett said, "To be honest, this kind of medicine does have some side effects if taken in excess, but I assure you, 1 or 2 times won't cause any problems." Gardner thought to himself, "This Barnett probably wouldn't harm me. Like he said, if he wanted to kill me, he would have done it already. For my great cause, I'll risk it." He made up his mind. The pill was put into his mouth, his throat moved, and he swallowed it. "Thank you for the donation. Chapter 113 Power. A few seconds after swallowing the pill, Gadon felt a burning sensation spread rapidly from his abdomen throughout his body. This feeling, an inexplicable, powerful confidence welled up within him. He felt he could take on 10 men at once. No, he wasn't afraid of any number. Gadon clenched his right fist slightly, and the veins on his right arm bulged, the muscles bulging to an exaggerated degree. He suddenly felt a burning heat throughout his body. "Ah!" the pirate captain yelled, punching the table in front of him. Gadon's fist struck the corner of the table, and the thick oak table, as if made of cheese, shattered into pieces, tabletop and leg alike. The force of the impact caused the table, now missing a leg, to crash to the ground. The pirate captain stared at the table in disbelief. Normally, it would have shattered his bones. His hand, aside from the sensation of hitting a hard object, only felt a fleeting, sharp pain when he struck the table. Gadon held his hand up to his eyes to examine it. There was no injury or swelling, everything was normal. After a slight surprise, a surge of desire welled up within him. He wanted to kill, he wanted to commit violence, he wanted to unleash his power. Noticing Gadon's change, Barnett muttered to himself, I should have reduced the dosage a bit. I didn't expect his constitution to be so sensitive." The pirate captain in his eyes was now truly ferocious, his physique transforming from a short, stocky man into a burly giant, his facial muscles contorting as if he had gone mad. But he calmly extended a hand, palm facing the about-to-be enraged Gadon, and began to mutter incantations. As a string of incomprehensible words escaped Barnett's lips, the manic expression on Gadon's face gradually faded, returning to normal. "Sorry, I didn't control the dosage properly just now," Barnett shrugged, showing not a trace of remorse. "Master, that feeling was incredible." The pirate captain was still in a daze, staring at his hands, unable to believe what had just happened. "I feel stronger than ever before. Is this an illusion?" "No, it's real." The broken table lying on the ground reminded him that what had just happened was real. Barnett chuckled and patted his shoulder, saying, "Your power hasn't dissipated yet. You can try again." "That's enough, Master Barnett. I trust your ability to pay." If all the pirates under his command could take this pill, as long as the dosage was controlled as the wizard instructed, dealing with these small pirate gangs in the Northwest Bay would be a piece of cake. Although he had almost gone mad, the memory remained. It was this self-proclaimed wizard who restored his normal consciousness. If he could remain so calm in the face of such danger, then this wizard could only be more powerful than he was now. He felt the power still flowing continuously within him, so he asked Barnett, "How long will this state last?" The duration of the effect varies from person to person, but generally it should last 3 to 4 hours. "How many of these pills can you provide?" 50 pills a week until you unify the pirate groups. After that, it will depend on your performance, but you probably won't need them then. No, Master, I should continue to use them." Becoming the second Edward was just the beginning. Gardner saw even greater possibilities in these miraculous pills. This wizard had already said he would stir up trouble and divide the Alder Kingdom. Perhaps he couldn't also carve out a share on land. Barnett's smile vanished instantly, sending a chill down Gadon's spine. The other man asked, "So, you've decided to cooperate with us?" Gadon nodded repeatedly. "It's an honor to cooperate with you and the mystic society behind you. But why did you choose me? You're not the only one I've chosen. There are others, I'll tell you later." "As for why I chose you," Barnett revealed a cold smile, speaking in a sinister tone, "I've examined many candidates through various methods, and you're the least foolish of them all. You know how to be patient, how to advance and retreat. There aren't many people like you in this Northwest." Hearing this, Gadon, who prided himself on his intelligence, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Was it what I said today that led you to this conclusion?" Barnett shook his head. "It's not just today, I've been observing you for a long time." A cold sweat broke out on the pirate captain's back. "How long has this wizard been lurking beside me? I didn't even notice a single sign." Barnett noticed his lingering fear and was quite satisfied. This was exactly the effect he wanted. Unlike lords like Maltz Kent, who were nominally still subject to the control of the king and his superiors, pirates were inherently opposed to the kingdom of Alder. Inciting Gadon to oppose the kingdom wouldn't require the same level of effort as dealing with Maltz Kent. Moreover, this pirate leader was quite to Barnett's liking. As he had just said, he was the least stupid one. Using other fools might cause trouble, which would be disastrous, and the Arcane Society wasn't in a hurry to expose itself to the world. Barnett was happy to recruit those he favored in a relatively peaceful way, just like he was doing now, not using the same methods he had with Malskend, but instead peacefully negotiating cooperation with Gadon. Except for that unfortunate fellow nicknamed Swordfish, it's just that Gadon's initial strength was rather meager, but that was fine. The weaker Gadon's initial power, the greater their dependence on him. Barnett decided to add fuel to the fire. Chief Garden, do you want to know where Edward, the former #1 pirate of Northwest Bay, is? Lord Edward? Where did he go? Garden was indeed puzzled. This former kingpin of Northwest Bay had vanished at the beginning of the year with his elite fleet, the source of a series of troubles in the region. Because of his disappearance, the pirates, now unrestrained, began to break the rules. One of them, Shark, even killed the old Lord of Arda. The new lord, Paul Gleman, vowed revenge, destroyed Shark, and then built a navy, swearing to eradicate all pirates. Barnett chuckled. To be honest, Edward is already one of us. He's playing a vital role elsewhere. The pirate captain's eyes widened. Even Lord Edward, he's cooperating with you. Barnett nodded. Yes, and because of us, his strength is even greater than before. Gadon fell silent, head bowed, seemingly lost in thought. After a long while, he suddenly looked up at Barnett and said, "My lord, let's discuss the specific details of our cooperation. Thanks to Little White X Runner for the donation." Chapter 114 Teach the Blue Stripe Drug a Lesson. Chief. Chief, the calls from his men snapped Gadon out of his reverie. What is it? The ships are almost loaded. We should go. All right, get on board. Gadon led the remaining pirates briskly toward the shore. Under the bright moonlight, 4 large pirate ships could be seen floating menacingly on the distant sea, their skull and crossbones flags faintly visible on their masts. Soon they boarded a small boat and rowed vigorously toward the larger ships. Because they were loaded with so much cargo, the pirate ships couldn't get too close to the shore, or they would run aground. Upon reaching the larger ships, they climbed the rope ladders and went up to the deck. A leader came to report, "Boss, everything is ready." Gadon, full of vigor, ordered, "Set sail." The 4 galleys began to move, and some of the newly captured slaves began their work as oarsmen. Accompanied by whips and curses, their miserable fate began. In a room in the stern deck, Gadon and his leaders were discussing their next move. One of them reported, "Our men in Franklin Harbor have sent intelligence that the Blue Stripe Dogs have just equipped themselves with a new type of ship. They say it doesn't need oars, it can run incredibly fast just by the wind." Gadon was somewhat surprised. That amazing? He saw it with his own eyes, and the Blue Stripe Dogs are still recruiting, seemingly intent on wiping us out. Gadon stroked his chin, beginning to think carefully. After Barnett gave him the first batch of pills, he couldn't wait to test them, but out of caution, his first test subject was only a small pirate group of a few dozen people. Gadon invited this small group to jointly rob a village. They believed him and came to the agreed meeting point, only to be met by 10 humanoid monsters who had taken the secret drug. The small pirate crew fought valiantly, but the battle ended in just over 5 minutes after both sides drew their weapons. Nearly half of the crew were torn apart alive by Gadon's men, and the rest collapsed to the ground, trembling and too weak to even stand. The memory of those torn apart still makes him feel nauseous. Overjoyed, Gadon quickly set his sights on his next target, a pirate crew of nearly 200. He sent 30 men to deal with them. The process was as easy as chopping vegetables. The surviving 100-odd men, realizing their vulnerability like children before adults, immediately knelt and surrendered. Soon, the 3rd and 4th pirate crews were absorbed by the Mudfish Gang, which had grown to over 600 men. Gadon then changed his strategy. Although most pirates accepted the principle that might makes right, many were still not entirely convinced by brute force. He intended to establish some kind of authority to win the respect of the other pirates. At this time, the best way to establish prestige was to confront the Alden Navy, which had repeatedly thwarted the pirates. Of course, Gadon still felt he was not yet fully capable, so he hadn't considered a direct confrontation with the Alden Navy. However, it was easy to do things that would embarrass the Blue Stripe pirates. With the help of his land-based informants, he planned several small-scale attacks. Fortunately, more than half of them were successful, and the few that failed resulted in minimal losses. His reputation was gradually spreading throughout the Northwest Bay. Blue Stripe Nemesis, the pirate's new nickname for him, was poised to replace his old nickname. Loach. Now, This new nickname was one of the few remaining ways for the pirates to comfort themselves when facing the Alden Navy. After thinking it over, Gadden snorted and said, "It seems our long period of forbearance has given them the illusion that we're invincible. It's time to teach them a lesson." The pirate leaders in the cabin became excited. It seemed their boss was about to pull off a big heist. Sure enough, Gadden instructed the leader who had just reported the intelligence, "We'll plan a feint to draw away the main force of the Navy. While the forces at Franklin Harbor are weakened, let's try to seize their newly launched strange ship and have some fun with it." The leader grinned. "Yes, boss, you're brilliant. You've got guts, boss." Gadden ignored his flattery and continued, "Have the people at Franklin Harbor intensify their intelligence gathering. Whether we can divert the main force of the Navy will be the most crucial point in our plan." The leaders became excited. Before, it was just small-scale skirmishes, but now they were going to directly seize a ship from the Alden Navy. How could they not be thrilled? With a boost from the miraculous drug that had inexplicably appeared some time ago, Gadden's men were enveloped in a strong sense of confidence and worshipped their leader even more for obtaining such a drug. "This time, we'll definitely teach those blue-striped dogs a lesson. After we steal the blue-striped dogs, other pirate crews will be begging us to let them join. I told you." Following Boss Garden, "The future is definitely bright." The pirates chatted amongst themselves, as if victory was already in their grasp. Bang! Garden slammed his hand on the table, startling everyone, and those who were talking immediately shut their mouths. The leader frowned, his face indescribably gloomy. "You're all quite capable, aren't you? Our team has just started to show some promise, and you've all forgotten who you are, getting all carried away. Let me tell you, the situation is still one of enemy strength and our weakness. Although we have 600 or 700 men, more than the Alden Navy, don't forget, Griles also has an army of over 1,000 men. Have you all forgotten how the Quake Gang and the Shark Gang were wiped out? It's only been a few months." The pirate leader looked at his men with exasperation, berating them for a full half hour. Finally, exhausted from his tirade, he picked up a can of water and gulped down several mouthfuls, then sat there silently with a stern face. One of the leaders cautiously smiled ingratiatingly. "Hey, Boss Garden. You're right. The brothers have indeed gotten a bit arrogant lately, but that's also because of your outstanding leadership, which has allowed our fleet to grow so much stronger all at once. Don't worry, we will definitely mend our ways, abandon our arrogance, and follow you faithfully." The others also realized what was happening and chimed in. Yes, we've really been a bit out of our minds lately. We suddenly have so many more men under our command, it's hard to adjust." After everyone had expressed their opinions, Gardner nodded, his voice softening somewhat. "I'm not really angry with you all. Our fleet has grown to this point thanks to the hard work of everyone here. So every day I feel like I'm walking on thin ice, afraid that one wrong move will cause all your hard work to vanish." His words deeply moved the pirates, who once again pledged their loyalty. Gadden announced, "All right, let's continue our discussion on how to draw out the main force of the Alden Navy." Chapter 115 Spy. The room was quiet, save for the ticking of a grandfather clock. This was the commander's office at the Franklin Harbor Naval Headquarters. Unlike the extremely monotonous office of a certain earl, this room was furnished with several potted plants that were clearly well cared for, and an oil painting hung on the wall depicting a red sun rising slowly from the vast sea. The office's occupant, Naval Commander Austin, sat in a chair behind his desk, eyes closed, resting. At this moment, the naval commander's mind was certainly not idle. He had too many things to consider lately. First and foremost was the shipbuilding. A new batch of slub ships was under construction at the shipyard's dry dock. 2 were being built simultaneously. The newly built slub ships were certainly not simple replicas of the Hope. On one hand, Lord Griles, after personally experiencing the sea trials, had coined a new term, ergonomics. He demanded that the crew's comfort on board be improved as much as possible, relatively speaking, without affecting the ship's combat effectiveness. For example, the deck furnishings should be as neat and orderly as possible, avoiding a messy and headache-inducing appearance. The operation of the sails should be improved and simplified, among other things. In short, the goal was to make the sailors feel at home. Of course, small ships like the slub had little room for improvement in this regard, but the Lord insisted that this design concept be carried over to the larger ships to be built later. Everyone understood the reason. A relatively comfortable environment makes it easier to maintain a good mood and physical strength. I'm saying this without affecting combat effectiveness. Combat effectiveness is the foundation of everything, Earl Gleman emphasized at the end. On the other hand, although the trial voyages of the Hope were generally successful, some flaws were discovered during the frequent training sessions conducted by Quake and others. These flaws, along with suggestions for improvement from the naval officers and men, were immediately fed back to the shipyards so that Reuben, Benjamin, and others could modify the design and implement improvements on the new ship. Both of these aspects posed a considerable challenge to the shipyard's craftsmen. Then there was the issue of piracy. Not only Earl Gleman, but Austin himself suspected that the Mudfish gang had spies lurking within or near the Navy. He had assigned Lieutenant Valk of the Naval Inspection Team to investigate, together with Duran, the intelligence officer Cecil had stationed in Franklin Harbor. He didn't know when they would have any results. If there were indeed spies, the Navy's impending offensive might have already been leaked. Knock knock knock. A knock on the door interrupted Austin's thoughts. He opened his eyes and called out, "Come in." The door opened, and two people entered, Lieutenant Valk and Intelligence Officer Duran. Austin gestured for them to sit down, saying, "I hope you two bring me good news." The two exchanged a glance, and Duran gestured for Valk to enter. The inspection team leader said seriously to Austin, "Commander, there's good news and bad news." Austin immediately said, "Tell me the bad news first." At least there was some good news to comfort him. "There are indeed spies planted by pirates among the Navy." That's not too bad. I already suspected it was highly likely." "So, what's the good news?" "We've identified the spy." Captain Valk handed Austin a stack of documents. Austin quickly glanced through them, saying with a hint of helplessness, "Well, it seems Lord Griles pays his soldiers a bit too much. They actually have spare money to do this kind of thing." The pirate spy planted in Fland Harbor was actually the owner of the town's only brothel, named Clement. The methods he used to obtain naval intelligence were unimaginable. Is the evidence conclusive? Absolutely conclusive. We had someone follow a contact. How many people in the Navy have been to his establishment? We've confirmed a total of 48 people have been there, including 6 officers. So many people. Austin's face gradually stiffened. He was furious. Surely quite a few bastards had been tricked into revealing information in bed. Expel everyone who's been to the brothel from the army. From now on, no one in the army is allowed to visit brothels. Austin was about to shout this out, but then thought better of it. He ordered, "Find out who leaked the information, and do whatever the military regulations say." Captain Valk replied, "Yes, sir." The intelligence officer, Duran, said, "Should we just have the city hall cooperate in shutting down this brothel?" Austin waved his hand and said, "No, I've been looking for an opportunity to catch a slippery eel. Perhaps this is a good opportunity to use this spy to set a trap for the slippery eel. Anyway, let's have a good talk with this Clement, the owner." Clement was tied up and hung in a secluded room in his brothel. He tried to make muffled noises through his gagged mouth, but it was to no avail. No one outside could hear him. After all, he had put a lot of effort into soundproofing the room so that his clients could do their business easily. One of the men said, "Let go of his mouth, Clement. If you dare to yell, HMPH." The towel covering Clement's mouth was pulled out. After taking a few deep, greedy breaths, the man begged for mercy. "Dear Navy gentlemen, I confess everything." The man who had been covering him smiled slyly. "Oh, so you're already feeling guilty? What are you going to confess to?" Clement was speechless. Today was Clement's unluckiest day. His business was doing well, and then a group of Navy officers came. He had a hunch to take the opportunity to gather some intelligence. The officers had booked a room and hired girls to eat, drink, and have fun. Unexpectedly, they started arguing and smashed a lot of things. As the owner, Clement naturally had to go and see. The officers kicked the girls out and asked their owner to judge the situation. Who would have thought that these guys would slam the door shut and swarm him, subduing him? And that's how he ended up like this. Clement stammered, I confess to tax evasion." Slap. A resounding slap sent the brothel owner's fleshy face jiggling. An officer lowered his voice and demanded, "Whether you evaded taxes or not is none of our business. Speak. Are you a spy planted in Franklin Harbor by the pirates?" "Keep your voice down, innocent." "How could I possibly have dealings with those vicious bastards?" Clement tried to deny it, but the naval officers quickly produced astonishing evidence, and with a gleaming knife held up against his face, the brothel owner finally admitted to having connections with a mudfish gang of pirates. The officer leaned over and patted his chubby face, as if patting a pig about to be sent to the slaughterhouse. He said with a forced smile, "According to our Commander Austin's orders, you'll be executed on the spot after you confess." Clement showed deep fear. He was about to beg for mercy when his mouth was immediately covered. But then the officer continued, "Just listen to me. A chance to live is right in front of you. I wonder if you can seize it." Hearing that he could still live, Clement, whose mouth was still covered, nodded vigorously. Thanks to Reader.com, composed for the donation. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 The Connection. A gust of autumn wind blew into his collar, making Tot shiver. He pulled his collar tighter and cursed under his breath, "This damned weather." The Mudfish pirate crew had just raided a village, stealing plenty of pigs, sheep, and fine wine. Adhering to the principle of live for today, the pirates naturally wanted to indulge in some revelry, holding victory celebrations for several days in a row. However, just as everyone was enjoying the fragrant roasted meat and mellow wine, poor Tot was sent by his vice-captain to Fuelinport to meet with a crew's informant there. He arrived at the only brothel in Fuelinport and, acting like a regular customer, slowly walked in. "Oh, it's been a long time, sir." Soon, a group of heavily made-up women surrounded him. Although he had been here before, Tot didn't think they would remember him. These prostitutes would say long time no see to everyone. Although several of the girls were quite attractive to him, business was more important. Tot found a place to sit down and loudly proclaimed, "I'm here to discuss business." "Get your boss here." A group of women winked at him. "Sir, don't you know our business? Just talk to us directly." Tot shook his head. "I'm here to discuss a large-scale deal. Your boss needs to make the decision." "What kind of business is so secretive?" Tot patted a suitcase he carried, grinning mischievously. A new batch of goods has arrived from the south. It will make men incredibly vigorous in bed. With it, I guarantee your customers won't want to go home." The prostitutes, without blushing, laughed together. At this moment, someone who recognized Tauten approached and said, "Oh, it's Mr. Tauten. Please come with me." The boss said he'd take you directly to him as soon as you arrived. Tauten followed the prostitutes to a luxurious room, where he immediately saw the brothel owner, his face bruised and swollen from a beating. Tot was a little surprised. "Mr. Clement, what happened to you?" Clement said with a mournful look on his face. "Oh, don't even mention it. I underpaid some taxes a while ago, and the tax collector sent a bunch of soldiers to pick a fight with me. They beat me up without letting me explain." Ouch! Because the movement of his facial muscles while speaking aggravated the swelling, Clement started to feel pain again. Tot smirked. "You've got some nerve, daring to underpay your lord's taxes," Clement retorted. "Whose side are you on anyway?" Tot quickly replied, "Of course I'm on your side, brother. These damned nobles, they wouldn't care if you were in trouble, but if you underpay even a penny, getting a beating is the least of their worries." The brothel owner's face showed deep sympathy, his small eyes flashing with resentment. "I just can't swallow this. These bloodsuckers, all for a few words." "Don't worry, brother," Tot patted Clement's shoulder, saying, "Soon we'll make your lord, Earl Gleman, pay his duel." "Oh," the fat owner became interested. "You want to avenge me?" Tot thought to himself, "Dream on. Who do you think you are?" He said, "I suppose so, but it's not just about avenging you. Gleman has been targeting us seafarers lately. He has grudges against us all. So the higher-ups are planning a big operation." Then he spat. "The shark's been strangled, his father's murder is avenged, so what's the point of continuing to harass us bystanders? The nobles and we keep to ourselves. That's the rule in the Northwest Bay. Those who don't follow the rules have to be taught a lesson." The brothel owner scoffed inwardly. "Keep bragging. Everyone knows you've been getting beaten to pulp by Alda's navy lately, only daring to steal guns from places the navy can't reach." Clement had been a pirate for a while in his youth and knew Mudfish, but back then they were both insignificant henchmen. Later, after Clement saved up some money, he left the pirate crew and traveled around for a while before starting a business in Fland Harbor. Although his current business wasn't exactly honorable, he had finally escaped that nomadic, life-risking existence. Shortly after the formation of the Arden Navy, Mudfish sent someone to approach him, demanding he work for him, threatening to expose his past as a pirate if he refused. Everyone knew that the current lord, Paul Gleman, hated pirates, and Clement dared not gamble on whether the lord would be kind enough to spare him. Besides, Mudfish only wanted him to deliver some messages, and he figured being careful wouldn't be a problem, so he agreed. Unexpectedly, despite his utmost caution, he was still caught. The Navy and the Lord's mansion came knocking and gave him a good beating. The reason they didn't execute him was because they needed him to act as a double agent. This wasn't just a matter of keeping the secret. If he refused, his head might be on the line. To save his life, Clement naturally cooperated without hesitation. Hearing Tout's boast, the brothel owner showed a look of shared indignation. "Brother Tout, I'll do anything to teach that kid Gleman a lesson. Tell me, what brings you here this time?" "I'll do my best to make it happen." Boss Clement, "Actually, what you need to do is the same as before, keep a close eye on the Blue Stripe Drugs movements. But from now on, you need to be more timely with the news, especially about their troops leaving for other places. You must inform us immediately," Clement said with some difficulty. "I also want to be more timely with the news, but I don't have a good way to do it." Tout smiled slightly. "That's why I'm here." He opened the box he was carrying. It didn't contain any aphrodisiacs or anything like that, but rather a bird. The bird was quiet and still in the box, and it wasn't frightened by Clement, a stranger. Clement recognized the bird. It was called a harpoon. It was relatively rare in the Northwest and very difficult to tame. Once captured, it would often starve itself to death without eating or drinking. He never expected that the Mudfish pirates would keep such a creature. "From now on, use this harpoon to relay any messages," said Tout. "Feed it well a few times first. Once it's tamed, the bird will remember this place. It can find us and fly back here." Clement stared at the harpoon and said, "That's extremely convenient." Tout instructed him, "If the Navy leaves Franklin Harbor, it's best to find out their numbers. This is extremely important to us. Don't worry, leave it to me." Clement readily agreed, then asked, "Can you tell me what big operation you're planning?" Tout shook his head. "I don't know the specifics, but it's going to be a show for the blue-striped dogs. I'll just do what the higher-ups say." To avoid arousing suspicion, Clement didn't press further. He wanted to touch the harpoon but immediately pulled his hand back. "Will this feathered beast peck people?" "Touch it without worry. Once tamed, it's very obedient." Tout grabbed the harpoon and shoved it into Clement's arms. After all, it was a rare animal that was difficult for humans to tame, and Clement teased it with great interest for a while. Finally, he smiled and said to Tout, "Brother, you've come all this way, it must be tiring. Why don't you play here for a bit before you go?" Tout was overjoyed. "Then I won't be polite, dear readers, I'm really sorry. I stayed up all night debugging a program bug last night and didn't have time to ask for leave. Fortunately, the problem is solved, and I don't have to work overtime this weekend." Chapter 117 Feint to the East, Attack in the West. Based on the above analysis, it is now certain that Garden is planning an attack on us. We believe he intends to use a feint to draw away our main force, while his real target is Port Franklin, in the conference room of the naval base. As everyone discussed the latest information obtained from Clement, an officer specializing in intelligence analysis said this. Austin was incredulous. Franklin Harbor was the naval headquarters. "If that's the case, they're incredibly audacious," the intelligence officer speculated. According to other captured pirate prisoners, Garden's strength has increased dramatically after recently absorbing several pirate groups, with his men growing to 600 or 700. "This might be why he's confident in confronting us," Austin nodded. "It seems that while we're targeting Garden, he's also plotting against us," Captain Quake of the Hope asked. "Commander, what should we do? Should we play along, leaving our main force in Franklin Harbor and waiting for Garden's attack?" Austin shook his head. "We need to think about it some more. There's no direct evidence yet that they're trying to lure us away before attacking Franklin Harbor. We can't just sit here at the base and watch them raid other places. What if they're just making a feint attack elsewhere? Damn it. If only the Navy had more manpower." After large pirate groups like Sharks and Quakes, with hundreds of men, were wiped out, what remained were small groups of at most 100 men, allowing the Navy to divide its forces without hesitation. Now that the Mudfish pirates have grown significantly stronger, further dispersing their forces would be risky. Someone spoke up. "With sufficient troops, we can assist other areas while ensuring the safety of Fulton Harbor. Major Joyce's 3rd Infantry Battalion is currently training nearby." Everyone turned to the officer, the captain of a galley warship named Yarman. Seeing everyone looking at him, Captain Yarman shrank back, hesitatingly saying, shouldn't we enlist the help of our army brothers? After receiving the distress signal, should we have the 3rd Infantry Battalion help us defend Fulham Harbor, so we can concentrate our forces on the scene of the incident? How can we do that? Eliminating pirates is a task assigned to the Navy by Lord Griles. Letting the army get involved makes us look incompetent, doesn't it? Sure enough, someone immediately objected. It was Captain Quake of the Hope. This guy had been soundly beaten by the 1st and 2nd Battalions in Laketown when he was a pirate, and he harbored some resentment towards the army. When Austin asked him to join the Navy, he specifically inquired about the Navy's personnel composition. Only after learning that everyone except Commander Austin had an army background, the rest were either recruits or pirate prisoners, did he finally decide to join. The other officers, though silent, showed from their expressions that they were inclined towards Quake. However, Commander Austin agreed with Captain Yarman's suggestion, saying, "Gentlemen, we should prioritize completing the mission. Any means are acceptable, even if it means relying on others. The construction of the 2nd batch of sailing ships is progressing smoothly. Once completed, we'll head south to open up the shipping route. The pirate problem can't be delayed any longer. Our primary objective was to eliminate Yadin the Mudfish. If he comes to us willingly, that would be even better. Besides, he's absorbed other gangs, saving us the trouble of dealing with them one by one." He instructed the intelligence officer, "You must make good use of Clement and try to figure out Yadin's true intentions." Seeing the commander's stance, the other officers could only agree. The meeting ultimately decided to join forces with the 3rd Infantry Battalion to eliminate the pirates, but this required approval from the General Staff. Austin immediately dispatched men to Laketown. In the days that followed, Garden's pirate group suddenly fell silent. Not only was Alda untouched by him, but there was also no news of him from other territories. It was clear that he was accumulating strength, perhaps inspecting his warships and armaments, or perhaps assimilating newly acquired pirate groups in preparation for the upcoming major battle. To counter the pirate attacks, the Navy intensified its training once again. Austin received authorization from the General Staff to temporarily place the 3rd Infantry Battalion, stationed near Franklin Harbor, under his command. During this period, Intelligence Officer Duran arranged for brothel owner Clement to contact the Loach pirate group several times. Information obtained through these contacts indicated that Loach Garden was indeed using a feint attack, and his target was indeed Franklin Harbor, but the specific date of the pirates' operation was still unknown. On October 10th, a distant distress signal was suddenly observed. The Navy immediately dispatched warships to the scene, and the defense of Fulham Harbor was taken over by the 3rd Infantry Battalion. Meanwhile, under the instructions of Intelligence Officer Duran, Clement released a harpoon carrying a message. The main naval force had departed. When the rescue fleet arrived, the pirates had already retreated. According to local militia reports, the pirates had only made a show of force outside the fortress and left, and their numbers were small. Austin concluded that this was a test operation by Garden to determine if a feint attack could lure out the main naval force. A week later, on October 17th at noon, the Hope and several other ships returned to their base port after completing an exercise. Recently, they had been practicing using new flag signals for communication at sea. The officers and men lowered the sails, inspected the hull, and after confirming that everything was normal, everyone except those left on duty went ashore to the mess hall, discussing the lunch menu along the way. Suddenly, the base bells rang, indicating an alarm signal had been received. Quake muttered, "Hopefully this time it's for real." That bastard Garden. He immediately rushed to the operations room with the other officers. The sailors regrouped, ready to depart at any moment. At the operations meeting, Austin decided to leave the Navy in Fland Harbor and send the 3rd Infantry Battalion to the rescue, as observations from the soldiers on duty indicated that the land route was the most convenient. The harpoon carrying the message the Navy has left once again flapped its wings and flew into the distance. A few hours later, 10 pirate ships flying the Skull and Crossbones flag appeared in the waters near Fland Harbor. Upon receiving the news, the pirate Captain Garden immediately commanded his fleet to head towards Fland Harbor. Standing on the deck, he shouted, "Opportunistically loot everything we can this time. Make a huge spectacle and establish our pirate crew's reputation." He then emphasized, "But remember this, you only have 5 hours. You must be back on the ship in 5 hours. Whether everyone is back or not, I will order the fleet to return. Long live, long live." The pirates roared in response to their leader, rubbing their hands together, ready for a grand raid. Garden drew his dagger and pointed east. Order the slaves to speed up. Charge towards Franklin Harbor, boss. Something's wrong. A shout from the lookout shattered the atmosphere. Garden, his good mood ruined, suppressed his anger and shouted, "What's wrong?" The lookout on the mast pointed east with a look of fear. "The Navy hasn't left. They're charging towards us." Chapter 118, A Decisive Battle 1. Thanks to the telescopes, the naval patrol boats detected the pirates' presence before they could reach the harbor. The sailors immediately rowed with all their might towards the base, notifying the officers and men on duty of the enemy situation using newly practiced flag signals even before entering port. "This is not a drill, this is not a drill, this is not a drill," the communications officer repeated 3 times at the end. The alarm bells at the base rang again, and all officers and men assembled once more. The pirates really are using a feint. It seems the 3rd Infantry Battalion's trip will be in vain. Upon learning that the pirates were approaching Franklin Harbor, the officers were very grateful for Commander Austin's earlier decision. The credit for annihilating the Mudfish pirate gang was finally going to fall on the Navy's own. Austin ordered everyone to board the ships and engage the pirates, while simultaneously sending word to the City Hall to mobilize militia to defend the coast and prevent any pirates from escaping to shore. He chose the Hope as his flagship, leading the other 6 galleys towards the pirates. This was the sailing warship's first real battle, and the entire crew was on edge. Captain Cork paced back and forth on the deck, constantly encouraging his men. "Our ship is the most powerful warship in Northwest Bay. Give it even a tenth of what you've trained, and we'll feed those fools to the fish." Finally, they'd caught a fish. Cork was thrilled. This was the only pirate force in Northwest Bay capable of mustering so many ships. "Hell, Garden, don't you dare run away again. Use your blood to baptize my rebirth." Even back when they were pirates, he'd disliked this cowardly little man, especially since the guy had betrayed him when they agreed to attack Lake Town together. Sailors armed with swords watched the pirate ship intently, preparing for a possible boarding maneuver. Sailors with muskets carefully checked their weapons, lighting the fuses and blowing on them to keep them burning. Especially the gunners, they were about to face their first real naval artillery battle. The rigorous training they had undergone paid off. Under the orders of their respective gunners, the gunners methodically prepared for firing. "Release the gun." The gunners untied the pulley chains binding the gun and cut the ropes securing the breech. A creaking sound from the gun wheels indicated the gun was released. One gunner grabbed the pulleys on either side of the gun. Otherwise, with the ship listing, the gun would have moved towards the center of the ship before a new order was given. "Level the gun." The gunner vigorously rotated the auger at the breech, adjusting the gun to horizontal, direct firing position. "Pull out the plug." They quickly positioned the gun, and when the muzzle had moved a foot towards the center of the ship, they used the recoil line to stop the gun from sliding further. Then one gunner pulled out the plug from the muzzle. "Load the ammunition." The loader first stuffed the propellant wrapped in velvet and a 6-pound shell into the breech, while another gunner, holding the loading rod, tamped it down in the breech to compact the ammunition. "Extend the muzzle." They immediately gripped the pulley chain, pulling it back and forth until the gun carriage was pressed tightly against the side of the gun. Once the barrel was extended outside the porthole, the pulley chain fell from their hands and coiled up neatly. The gunner began loading the priming powder. He picked up the touch pin, inserted it into the barrel through the breech above the stern, pierced the velvet covering the gunpowder, and then poured finely ground powdered gunpowder into the powder bath and touch pin through a conical tube. He carefully compacted the powder with a curved cone. At the same time, a gunner held his hand to protect the powder from the sea breeze. After loading the powder, the gunner hung the conical tube on his back. The gunner responsible for igniting the gun lit the slow-burning fuse on the ignition rod, carefully blowing on it every now and then to prevent it from going out. The loader, holding the gunpowder bag for the next shot, stood beside the gun barrel, ready at any moment. The pirate ship was getting closer and closer. The 7 warships, led by the Hope, seemed wound up tight, awaiting the moment of engagement. While the naval officers and men were tensely preparing for battle, their opponent, the pirate fleet, was in a bad situation. They thought the main naval force was no longer in port, but their intelligence was wrong, and they had walked right into the enemy's trap. Garden grabbed the collar of the vice commander responsible for contacting the informant, his eyes bloodshot as he roared, "Damn it, what the hell is going on? Tell me what's going on." I don't know either. Boss, The news from the Falcon clearly states that the Navy has left Franklin Harbor, the vice commander pleaded, his face contorted with grief. Slap, Gatton slapped him hard across the face, leaving the vice captain dizzy and groaning on the deck. A subordinate asked, "Boss, is it the same as before? Give the slaves some drugs to speed things up and get them out of here." Several times before, when they were almost captured by the Alden Navy, the Mudfish pirates had relied on this mysterious drug to give the slaves a sudden burst of stamina and strength, allowing them to row desperately and escape. After numerous trials, they could precisely control the dosage, ensuring the slaves gained strength but not enough to break free of their shackles. The junior leader's words brought Gatton to his senses. Should they fight or flee? He frowned, pondered for a few seconds, and then made his decision, loudly ordering, "Everyone take the secret drug. Let's fight the blue stripe drugs to the death." Yes, he was going to stay and fight the Alden Navy. The Mudfish pirates were no longer the small gang of just over 100 men, chased all over the world by the Navy. To truly unify the Northwest Bay, he needed to establish his own reputation. Becoming the second Edward, Alda, required overcoming this hurdle in the Navy's path. Continuing to constantly avoid the Navy would only make him a laughingstock and weaken his authority among his men. The small-time leader punched the air and shouted, "Boss, that's awesome. We'll follow you." The pirate crew was full of ruthless and aggressive men. After their leader had obtained a mysterious drug that allowed them to absorb several groups of their rivals, they developed a strange confidence in their abilities and had long resented their leader's avoidance strategy towards the blue-striped dogs. Kill all the blue-striped dogs. Loot Franklin Harbor, I'll tear them to pieces. Through their own means of communication, Garden's orders were quickly relayed to the other ships. And the decks echoed with the pirates' frenzied shouts. The pirates took out the pills they had been given beforehand and swallowed them whole. Soon, the shouts on deck grew increasingly frantic and loud. The pirate in charge of supervising the rowing slaves paced back and forth in one side of the cabin, whipping what he considered to be weak oarsmen. The two fleets rapidly approached. Chapter 119 Dream. "Alan, Alan, get up now," a gentle voice echoed in the boy's ears. "You little lazy bones, the sun's already high in the sky." 12-year-old Alan rolled over, muttering, "Mom, let me sleep a little longer." Sigh. "I just can't do anything with you. Sleeping in so much, no girl will like you in the future." Okay, Mom, just a little while." The boy drifted back to sleep. He didn't know how much time had passed when he felt his mother gently stroking him, saying in a slightly stern tone, "You have to get up this time." Alan reluctantly bid farewell to his dreams, opening his eyes to see his mother with her hands on her hips, her expression slightly annoyed. He climbed out of bed, covering his mouth with his right hand, and yawned. Okay, I'll get up now." He reluctantly began to slowly get dressed. The mother sighed and complained, "Honestly, look at little Tom next door. He gets up at dawn to help his mom cook, unlike you who loves to sleep in." "Wait a minute, what happened to you?" Alan snapped out of it and hurriedly said, "Nothing's wrong. I just tripped and fell." But without a word, the mother grabbed the boy's arm, rolled up his underwear, and several bruises were clearly visible on his body. Her face instantly contorted with concern, and she anxiously asked, "What happened? How did you get like this?" The boy tried to sound nonchalant, saying, "It's really nothing, Mom. Yesterday I tripped and tumbled down the slope, and these bruises are from that." But the mother could tell her son was lying. She stared into his eyes and asked sternly, "Did you get into another fight?" "I didn't," the boy hurriedly retorted, but his voice instantly became barely audible when he met his mother's eyes. He lowered his head and whispered, "I'm sorry. Mom, I won't do it again." His mother looked at Alan, her eyes filled with deep sorrow. She didn't press him further about why he had fought. She knew the reason. Alan was not only kind and compassionate, but also possessed a tolerance beyond his years, rarely getting into arguments. So far, only one thing could have provoked this child to the point of violence: someone mocking his only relative, his mother. His mother's husband had died while she was pregnant with Alan, and Alan had never met his father, becoming a posthumous child. His mother hadn't remarried, raising her son single-handedly. As a young widow, no matter how careful she was, gossip inevitably circulated in the village. The adults, out of consideration for their neighbors, would only whisper a few words behind his back, never saying such things to Alan's mother's face. But children are less restrained when playing together, often sharing secrets they've overheard from adults. It's not just about sharing secrets. When children occasionally clash, they give each other all sorts of nicknames. When this happens to Alan, nicknames like bastard are considered mild. All of this becomes the fuse that ignites the boy's anger. Did you promise me that if this happens again, you'd just ignore it and not let yourself get hurt? The mother's eyes welled up with tears as she pleaded with her son once more. Naturally weak-willed, she absolutely refused to let Alan solve problems with his fists. Her son was now her only family, and anything that might harm him had to be avoided. Alan's heart ached at his mother's tears. He wiped her eyes with his sleeve and said, "Mom, I promise you. I promise this is the last time." Sigh, "You always say it's the last time, it's all that guy Payne's fault. He spread rumors he heard from who knows where, and I got angry and beat him up. We've made up now. You saw us walking home together yesterday." The worry on his mother's face lessened slightly. She hugged her son tightly and instructed, "If others spread rumors, just ignore them. Don't you dare hide him again, okay, Mom, I promise you." "I don't know if you listened." "Never mind, go wash your face and eat breakfast." The boy quickly washed up and went to the table to eat the breakfast his mother had made. Although it was simple food, for some reason, it tasted especially delicious. His mother also came to the table, and the two talked about their livelihood, boiling salt. "There are fewer salt merchants coming to our village lately," his mother said with a hint of worry. "The salt merchants from the neighboring Alda haven't come for a long time, and there aren't as many from Berdon as before. We're earning much less money all of a sudden." Alan guessed, "I heard some rumors at the blacksmith's shop. Apparently, Alda has built some new salt works that can produce a lot of salt at once." He changed the subject. "Mom, don't worry. I'll soon become a formal apprentice to the village blacksmith. The blacksmith even praised me for doing a good job. Then I'll be able to earn a wage. Although an apprentice's wage isn't much, it'll be enough to supplement the family income." His mother smiled and patted her son's head. This child was always so sensible and understanding of her hard work. "Blacksmithing isn't easy. You must learn well from the blacksmith master." After breakfast, his mother cleaned up the dishes and came to the table again. Alan was a little surprised. Usually, his mother would have started the fire early to prepare for boiling salt. Why did she have so much free time today? He said, "Mom, if there's nothing else, I'll go help out at the blacksmith's." The boy got up to leave, but his mother grabbed his arm. "Alan," his mother called softly. "Besides not fighting, don't forget my other instructions." Why was she suddenly saying this? Alan was a little confused, but he still agreed. Then he heard his mother continue, "Tell me what I usually tell you." The boy, a little helpless, began to list them one by one. "Chew your food slowly, cover yourself up well when you sleep, don't fight with anyone, and get up early." After listing them, his mother nodded and said, "After I leave, you must remember all my instructions." Alan was shocked. "Leave? Mom, where are you going?" What happened next horrified him. His mother's body was becoming increasingly unreal, until it became a transparent phantom. He reached out to grab his mother's hand, but grasped only empty air. "Alan, I'm sorry, Mom can't stay with you any longer. You must take good care of yourself from now on." After saying this, the mother's illusory figure finally disappeared. Alan stood blankly beside the table, tears streaming down his face. "No." The boy suddenly opened his eyes, but this time he was truly awake from his dream. "I apologize, because of work. Updates have been unstable lately. I will try my best to maintain one update per day, although it might be like now, updating in the early morning. Please don't worry about this book being abandoned. I will keep writing. I haven't thought through the details of the naval battle yet, so I've written some other content first. This chapter might not be very well written. I've been yawning constantly while typing." Chapter 120 Powerless. Young Alan awoke from a deep sleep, his mouth slightly agape, his eyes staring blankly at the rafters, tears slowly streaming down his face. "Mother," despite the passage of time, he still refused to confront the reality of his only remaining family member's death. Compared to the immense emotional pain, the ever-growing physical wounds felt insignificant. More than 2 weeks ago, Alan's village was attacked by pirates. He and some of the villagers were captured and enslaved. Even more tragically, Alan's mother was killed for trying to stop the pirates from taking her son. The boy was knocked unconscious and, along with others who had been enslaved, were loaded onto a pirate ship and transported to the pirates' secret stronghold, a small island. Many of the stronger, older men were crammed onto the galleys as rowers, while several children, including Alan, served as servants to the leaders. Every day, the boy longed for his deceased mother, remembering that she had died protecting him. A burning hatred for the pirates raged within him. He hated his own weakness and his past cowardice. He tried to escape, but each attempt failed. Once, he had the chance to go to the seaside, and after learning that this was a pirate territory far from the mainland, he realized that escaping would be no easy feat. The scars on his body were from his previous escape attempts, when he was discovered and severely beaten each time. Faced with a pirate's enslavement, he resisted and refused to obey, which only brought him more humiliation and torture. "If it weren't for your handsome looks, I would have thrown you into the sea to feed the fish long ago," Alan's pirate master said after giving him a severe beating. Just as Alan lay on the bed lost in thought, the door opened, and he recognized the person who walked in, Tom, the boy from his former village neighbor's house. Many children from the village had been kidnapped by the pirates, including even that annoying boy, Payne, who was always at odds with him. "Alan, did you have another nightmare?" Tom noticed the tear tracks on Alan's eyes and asked. "Ugh, I dreamt of my mother again." Tom's face showed sorrow upon hearing this. Although his parents hadn't been killed by pirates like Alan's mother, he didn't know if he would ever see them again. After several beatings, he had resigned himself to his slave status. He suppressed the urge to cry and went to hug his friend. Just then, someone else entered, an old servant who had been a slave there for many years. Seeing the two boys in such a state, he knew they were longing for their families again. "Sigh," the old servant sighed, reminding him, "It's Alan's turn to deliver the food today. Hurry up, or you'll upset them again." Alan got up, went to the pirate's stronghold's kitchen, grabbed a large food box, and reluctantly carried it to a courtyard. In the courtyard was a row of barracks, divided into small rooms, each containing a young woman imprisoned. At his age, he didn't understand why the pirates kept so many young women locked up here and wouldn't let them work. He had asked the old servant before, who replied that he would understand when he got older, shaking his head and saying, "What a tragedy." Under the watchful eyes of the pirate guards, he took food from his lunchbox and delivered it to each room. In the last room was a girl not much older than him, very cute, but at an age when she should be innocent and lively. She had a blank expression. Alan placed the food on the small table in the room, and the girl nodded slightly to him, her face still expressionless. Just as the boy was about to leave, a commotion arose outside. "Haha, finally it's our turn to relax. This time I'll try out the younger ones. You're something else, coming over so early in the morning." It was the guard's voice. "Standing on guard all night, still haven't slept," a pirate barged in, shouting. Seeing Alan still there, a brand on the boy identified him as a slave. He waved impatiently, saying, "Get lost, don't disturb my fun." "Fun? What did he want?" Alan noticed fear on the girl's blank face, instinctively sensing the pirate's intentions. "What are you doing?" The pirate was surprised, then his expression turned fierce. "What I do is none of your business." "Fine, I'll tell you. I'm going to ravage this little wench." "What? You want to watch? Don't hurt her." The boy, thinking the pirate was going to beat the girl, mustered his courage and spread his arms to block the pirate, his small body a stark contrast to the pirate's burly frame. The pirate was incredulous. This little slave who came to deliver food dared to speak to him like that? Didn't he know his place and where he was? He grinned menacingly. Yo. Where did this little hero come from?" Playing the hero saves the damsel in distress game, the ferocious aura emanating from the pirate made the boy tremble uncontrollably, but he still didn't back down, stubbornly standing in front of the pirate. A large hand grabbed his clothes and lifted him up like a chick. "Looks like you're a newbie who hasn't been here long. Let me teach you the rules here. Let go of me." Alan grabbed the pirate's hands, trying to pry them open, but the pirate's hands were like iron clamps. He was feudal and could only shout, "It's wrong to bully people." "Bully people? Ha ha ha," the pirate laughed wildly. "You need to understand, this is a pirate's den. The strong can do whatever they want to the weak." He swung his arm and slammed the boy's head hard against the wall. Alan felt a sharp pain in his head, followed by a strong sense of dizziness, and felt everything around him shaking. The pirate asked him, "What? Still trying to stop me, you, this is wrong." A fist the size of a cooking pot slammed into Alan's face, blood gushing from his nose. The pirate was furious. If slaves weren't considered common property of the gang, he would have killed the brat with a single blow. Just as he was about to continue punishing the ignorant slave, a small hand landed on him. It was the girl. The girl shook her head at the pirate, her face pleading. HMPH. Fine, I have things to do, I won't waste time with this little thing. Already dizzy and disoriented, Alan was dragged out of the room and thrown outside like a rag. Then the pirate kicked him in the head, and the boy passed out. When he woke up, he was lying on the bed in the room he had just been in. The wound on his head throbbed with pain, almost making him faint again. Thank you, a voice reached his ears. He turned his head and saw the girl sitting beside him. It seemed she hadn't been hit by the pirate. You're welcome, Alan said. Having also been enslaved by pirates, he felt sympathy for those imprisoned here. Those outside could at least move around the stronghold, but the women here seemed unable to even leave this courtyard. He got out of bed. And after confirming he could walk, he took his leave. What could he change now? Besides expressing his discontent in that same powerless way as before, he couldn't change anything. He didn't get home until 2:30 a.m., but at least the week's functions were finally debugged successfully, so he didn't have to work overtime this weekend. Greek letter Rho. Chapter 121. A decisive battle 2. Are all the cannons ready? Captain Quake of the Hope shouted. All ready, Captain, ready to fire at any moment, the gunnery officer replied immediately. The weather was already cold, and the temperature difference between the sea and land caused the monsoon to blow from the land to the sea, putting the Alda fleet, which had set sail from the port, upwind, while the pirate fleet was downwind. Quake shouted, Men, we're upwind now, we have to make the most of this opportunity. A sailing warship equipped with cannons has many advantages when upwind. The sea wind tilts the ship, causing the cannons on the side facing the enemy ship to point slightly downwards, making it easier to hit the enemy warship near the waterline. Furthermore, ships upwind are less affected by smoke after firing, making it easier to aim and reload, unlike downwind ships which are affected by smoke from both their own cannon fire and the enemy's. However, being upwind also has its disadvantages. For warships with multiple layers of cannons, the lower cannons cannot be opened when the waves are too high due to the ship's tilt, resulting in a sharp reduction in firepower. Being downwind, on the other hand, has its advantages. Warships downwind can easily escape if they lose a battle, as the enemy cannot catch up. However, warships upwind are much less likely to escape if they cannot hold out. Generally speaking, ships upwind have a much higher probability of sinking their opponents. The role of the Navy determines its tactics. There is an interesting contrast from the age of exploration. Historically, France, a powerful land power, mostly used its navy to cover land landings and escort merchant ships, rarely engaging in decisive battles. Their mission dictated that they could not linger in combat, so the French navy would often seize downwind positions, fire a few shots, and then retreat. Meanwhile, France's arch-rival, Britain, had a glorious tradition of always having the upper hand. Pursuing a policy of dual superpowers, Britain's navy had dominated the world for 2 centuries. For them, naval warfare was about annihilating the enemy, so their massive fleets mostly aimed to sink enemy ships. As the two sides drew closer, Quake took over the helmsman's duties. The Hope needed to adjust its angle so that its broadside cannons could be aimed at the pirate ship. Turning downwind was a dangerous task, and at such a crucial moment, Quake chose to steer himself. The port gunners held their breath, their eyes fixed on the distant pirate ship, awaiting the gunnery officer's orders. On the pirate fleet side, Godin and his men gradually made out the Arden Navy's formation, with the Hope, charging at the forefront, being particularly eye-catching. Is that the legendary strange ship? It certainly doesn't look like it has ours. As a seasoned pirate, Godin naturally had a great interest in all sorts of things on the water, and seeing the Hope made him excited. The medication he had just swallowed began to take effect, giving him immense confidence. The initial panic he felt upon realizing he was running head-on into the Alden Navy had vanished. Now, Godin's mind was filled with thoughts of how to capture that strange ship as one of his treasures. Have the slaves row harder. Everyone prepare for boarding, the pirate captain roared, eager to tear the enemy to shreds. The crack of whips in the cabin grew even louder. The Hope awaited her long-awaited moment. The lead pirate ship was trying to board her, and some pirates on deck were still whistling arrows in her direction. The gunnery officer seized the opportunity and shouted, "Fire!" Before the words were even finished, the gunners of the 4 cannons, having heard the order, lit their firing ports almost simultaneously. With smoke and flashes, 4 solid shot shells were fired at once. The crew of the lead pirate ship only saw a flash of light from the 4 dark tubes on the opposite ship's side before the ship was enveloped in smoke. What's going on? Their ship caught fire by itself. The pirates, who were eager to jump onto the enemy warship, were completely bewildered. Then they felt the warship beneath their feet suddenly shake violently. Many people lost their footing and fell onto the deck. A huge cracking sound followed, as if someone was smashing wooden planks with a sledgehammer. This was the effect of cannonballs hitting the pirate ship. Compared to the Hope's thick hull, the pirate's galley had a thinner hull, and the cannonballs hit it as easily as piercing through a layer of butter. The pirate ship had 2 decks, and the rowers were located in the deckhouse between the upper and lower decks. The cannonballs that penetrated the hulls instantly took the lives of several rowers, but the damage to the ship's movement was even greater. The flying wood chips from the shattered hull became deadly sharp weapons embedded in the flesh of the surrounding rowers. The injured rowers cried out in pain, writhing on the deck. The uninjured oarsmen were also stunned by the sudden attack and the horrific state of their companions. Many fell to the ground from the violent jolts, including the pirate in charge of commanding the slaves. The entire cabin stared blankly at the hull facing the enemy, where 4 large, broken holes were clearly visible. They were stunned for only a few seconds before screams of terror erupted. Devil's weapons, they used magic. Chaos broke out in the cabin, and no one bothered to row anymore. Soon, the horrific scene on the lower deck became known to everyone on board. This was the first time anyone on the ship had encountered such a situation. The normal course of action would have been to press the gunwale against the enemy's gunwale and jump over so the sailors could fight each other. Some of the more knowledgeable sailors knew that the navies of the southern kingdoms were equipped with ballistae capable of long-range firing, but the 4 dark tubes protruding from the enemy's gunwale were clearly not ballistae. They had never heard of ballistae firing with flashes and smoke, and ballistae couldn't have been so accurate or powerful. The pirate captain was the first to react. He ordered the first mate, "You go down and supervise those slaves yourself. Keep rowing. We need to get close quickly, or we'll just get beaten up here." The first mate instantly snapped out of his daze, responded, and headed down to the lower deck. "You bunch of bastards, what are you panicking for? Get the ship moving." The first mate's roar quickly echoed across the lower deck. Crack, the sound of whip-slashing bodies rang out continuously in the cabin. "Lazybones, back to your positions. Row harder." The pirate leaders in charge of guarding the slaves also began to yell menacingly at them. To avoid affecting morale, the first mate personally ended the lives of the slaves who were groaning from their wounds, one by one. Under the whipping and the threat of death, the rowers quickly regained their order, returning trembling to their original positions and continuing to row. While the pirate ship was in chaos, the 4 cannons on the port side of the Hope completed a new round of ammunition loading. The first round of shelling was very effective, greatly boosting the morale of the entire crew. The gunner, beaming with pride, drew his sword, pointed it at the pirate ship, and shouted, "Fire!" The smoke from the previous volley hadn't even cleared when the second volley began. "Damn it! There's a second volley." The pirate captain now hated that strange ship. The hull beneath his feet shook violently again. He knew without a doubt that he'd been hit again. He silently prayed that not many of the slaves on the lower deck had died, but just as his prayer ended, news that nearly made him faint came from below. "It's over, the hull is flooding. Could someone please explain what methods of large-scale saltpeter production are available given the protagonist's current technological capabilities?" Chapter 122, A Decisive Battle 3. Using the heel pull caused by the waves, the Hope's second volley of fire hit the pirate ship near the waterline, causing flooding to begin in its hold. Hooray! Cheers erupted on the Hope, as it prepared for a third volley. The lead pirate ship, however, was utterly devastated. Its captain shouted, "Plug the leak." Those in the hull tried everything to plug the leak, but with a third volley from the Alden Navy, the task was clearly impossible. As seawater surged in, the breach at the waterline widened, and the water in the hold increased dramatically. The captain went down to assess the situation. It was beyond saving. The Hope, on a stroke of luck, hit the waterline again in its third volley. The pirate captain, filled with resentment, glared at the Hope and reluctantly ordered, "Signal to nearby ships, we must abandon this ship." The fate of the lead pirate ship caused chaos among the ships behind. Gaddon, incredulous, asked, "What happened?" Before even reaching the enemy fleet, one of their ships was already destroyed. He shouted through a large megaphone, "Speed up! Speed up! Get on their ships!" The pirate leader believed that no matter what strange long-range attack methods the Alden Navy had, Once boarding action began, his warriors could slaughter the enemy in a very short time, making the battle as easy as when they had absorbed other pirate groups. The second pirate ship approached the sinking lead ship, and the pirates on the first ship jumped aboard. The Hope immediately opened fire on the pirate ships that came to its rescue, but unfortunately, only one shot hit the upper deck. Although only one shell hit, it still caused a great deal of damage, taking the lives of several pirates and destroying the not-so-thick mast. The Hope's excellent performance successfully attracted a lot of hatred, and 3 more pirate ships rushed towards it. Commander Austin, personally directing the operation, lowered his binoculars and ordered the messenger, "Notify all ships to support the Hope, but try not to interfere with the Hope's guns." Following this order, the other naval vessels increased their speed, flanking the pirate ships. "Reload grape shot, prepare the swivel guns." Cough cough. Seeing the enemy ships approaching, the gunnery officer on the Hope issued a series of orders. Thick smoke and the acrid smell of burning gunpowder filled the deck, causing him to cough repeatedly. Just as the gunnery officer was struggling to observe the enemy ships through the smoke, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly rang out beside him. It turned out that in the chaos, the gun crew hadn't properly cleaned the gun barrel before stuffing in a new gunpowder charge. The residual fire in the barrel ignited the newly loaded gunpowder, spraying it onto the loader's face. This was the first time anyone, including the gunnery officer, had encountered such an accident. They frantically dragged the injured loader aside and checked his injuries. "What are you doing? Get back to your gun positions and prepare to fire." Captain Cork noticed the situation and immediately ordered the wounded to be dragged into the cabin. He commanded the gunners to return to their posts and sternly instructed them, "Follow the firing procedures exactly." The gunners quickly took their positions. By this time, the nearest pirate ship was only a little over 10 meters away. The gunnery officer roared, "Fire!" 4 6-pounder cannons and 2 swivel guns fired deadly grape shot, a storm of metal hurtling towards the pirate ship. The pirates, preparing for boarding, only saw a dark mass flying rapidly toward them, and then a large number of men on deck instantly fell. A tragedy unfolded on the deck, with men and women on the pirate ship overturned, and even the hull riddled with holes. Screams and groans filled the deck. "My arm! My arm!" A pirate looked at his right arm in horror. A bullet had just pierced through it, and now he felt nothing but pain. Because of the mysterious drug he had just taken, his heart was beating faster than usual, and his blood was flowing faster than normal, causing blood to gush out of the wound on his arm. It was practically spurting out. "No, no, don't do this." The fear of death suppressed the excruciating pain in his right arm. The pirate babbled incoherently, desperately trying to cover the wound with his trembling left hand, but it was no use. No matter how hard he tried, blood continued to gush from between his fingers. Soon, his head began to spin, his vision blurred, and he lost his balance. A wave crashed over the ship, causing it to sway slightly, and the pirate collapsed onto the deck with a thud, never to rise again. Many others on the deck suffered the same fate, all those with more serious injuries bled profusely. Eventually, their groans and cries subsided, and they breathed their last. "Get down. Everyone get down." Among the remaining uninjured survivors, a quick-witted one shouted a warning to his companions, urging them to lie prone on the deck to avoid the Alden Navy's bombardment. The 2 remaining pirate ships charging towards the Hope, seeing the tragic state of their comrades ahead, suddenly slowed their pace, as if afraid of suffering the same fate. Their drug-fueled frenzy was abruptly doused with the cold water of reality. The captains of both ships quickly regained their composure, carefully considering whether to risk provoking the strange ship. "What are they doing?" Garden, sensing the hesitation of the 2 ships ahead, his face contorted with rage. "Don't they know? The enemy has powerful long-range attacks. Stopping only means being passively attacked." He stomped his foot angrily on the deck. Perhaps due to the drugs, he had lost his usual composure, feeling irritable whenever unexpected and unfavorable situations arose. A leader beside him, his eyes bloodshot, suggested, "Chief Garden, these new recruits are unreliable. Let's go ourselves, slaughter the blue-striped dogs, and then slowly deal with these traitors." The first 4 ships belonged to 3 small gangs recently acquired or joined by the Mudfish Gang. To test their loyalty and combat capabilities, they were positioned at the forefront of this operation. After all, even if the main force of the Navy left, they would probably leave some troops to guard their base, and some miscellaneous soldiers would still be needed to lead the vanguard. Unexpectedly, they ran into the main force of the Navy. Garden clenched his fist tightly and slammed it hard on the mast, making the not-so-thick mast of the galley wobble. Enough. While that strange ship is distracted by those trash in front, let's attack those galleys. The 6 pirate ships slightly adjusted their direction and rushed towards the other Navy ships. Thanks to the reader for the reward. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123: A Decisive Battle. 4. Musketeers ready, grenades ready, rotary guns ready. The Navy's 6 galleys were not equipped with large cannons, but they were equipped with rotary guns that could rotate flexibly. The sailors on board were divided into 2 groups. One group was equipped with swords or axes, specializing in hand-to-hand combat, and responsible for dealing with enemies jumping onto the ship. In addition, each of them was also equipped with several clay pot grenades. The other group of sailors was equipped with muskets. They stood behind the melee soldiers and were responsible for close-range sniping of enemies who were fighting their own sailors. Considering that the current naval combat was still mainly boarding combat, and in preparation for possible urban warfare in the future, the equipment department had Herman and others in charge of firearms research specially develop a large-caliber musket with a short range that could fire shot, iron filings. This musket, which the soldiers called Big Shot, was practically a handheld cannon. The iron filings it fired could make enemies in a fan-shaped area within 20 to 30 meters bleed profusely. Moreover, because the number of iron filings was so large and the iron filings were so small, they were extremely difficult to remove once they were embedded in the flesh. Nearly half of the sailor muskets were these big-shot muskets. As enemy ships approached, soldiers equipped with long-barreled muskets opened fire first, causing immense chaos among the pirates and forcing them to duck for cover. Once within range, 6 pirate ships each boarded a warship. Through the grappling hooks, some pirates, risking being shot by muskets, threw large iron hooks with ropes attached to their ends onto the warships. Once hooked to the warship's hull, they pulled the hooks together while the sailors reloaded, rapidly closing the distance between the 2 ships. As the pirates pulled the hooks, the sailors frantically hurled grenades at the enemy ships. If they landed on the enemy ship, even those lying on the deck would be bombarded. Fortunately, due to the weather, they were dressed thickly enough, with the power of the grenades, as long as exposed areas weren't hit by shrapnel or nails, the pain was minimal. However, many unlucky men were still injured. Lower the gangplanks. Thick gangplanks flipped over from the pirate ship, one end studded with iron nails, and slammed onto the warship's gunwale. Charge! Take them down, the pirates roared, rising to their feet and charging towards the warship. Now is the time. Fire! The swivel guns on the 6 galleys opened fire, the volleys sweeping away the pirates huddled on the gangplanks, sending them crashing into the sea to feed the fish. Don't stop. Charge! Charge and get close to them, the pirate leaders shouted, some even waving their weapons and leading a second charge towards the gangplanks. Bang! Bang! The close-range mortars opened fire, though less powerful than the swivel guns. The damage they inflicted was enough to cause excruciating pain and render the pirates incapable of fighting. On land, the situation might have been somewhat better, but on the turbulent gangplank between the 2 ships, the sudden, powerful blows threw the pirates off balance, and the second wave attempting to cross also fell into the sea with cries of agony. Normally, under such repeated attacks, a typical pirate group would have surrendered or scattered long ago. However, to bolster his forces and reverse the disadvantage caused by the first 4 ships, Gardman ordered his elite men to take the drugs a second time. Although the second dose was much smaller, the combined effect of the 2 drugs had already clouded many men's judgment, their minds filled with a thirst for the enemy's blood. Those who still retained their sanity were no longer afraid of casualties and were oblivious to the horrific state of their comrades ahead. The gangplank was short, taking only a few seconds to cross, not enough time for the sailors to reload their ammunition. Brothers, kill them. The captains of each ship took the lead, leading their melee sailors in a chaotic battle against the pirates who had stormed onto their ships. Due to the utter chaos, most of the soldiers equipped with muskets also drew their swords and joined the fray. HAA, Captain Yarman roared, barely managing to deflect a long sword swung at him with his sword. To his surprise, the impact left his hand numb. Captain Yarman was secretly astonished. There was no one in the world with such strength. He usually prided himself on his own strength, but compared to the pirate before him, He was far inferior. Yarman forcefully deflected the sword, gripping his own hilt and maneuvering against his opponent. After several rounds, he gradually realized that his opponent was merely strong. His moves were wide and unrestrained, a reckless style of fighting. The pirate fighting him was almost crazed, the veins on his bare arms bulging as if they were about to burst out. "Come on, blue striped dog," the pirate roared madly, drool dripping from his mouth. He raised his longsword and charged at Yarman once more, ignoring everything else. Yarman tensed, but instead of raising his sword to parry or dodge, he seized an opportunity to crouch and sweep his leg. With a clang, the pirate fell onto the deck. The pirate struggled to get up, but a sharp sword pierced his heart from behind. The captain pulled out his own sword, caught his breath, and surveyed the battle. Due to the firepower attack before the boarding maneuver, the pirates had suffered heavy casualties and were outnumbered by the navy. However, each charging pirate seemed to possess immense strength, often requiring 2 or 3 sailors to barely hold off a single pirate. Yarman sensed something was amiss. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Were all these pirates superhuman? Fortunately, the sailors participating in this battle were no longer the rookies who had just enlisted. Their rigorous obedience training and iron discipline had helped them overcome their fear and panic. The generous rewards for merit had ignited their fighting spirit, and they had accumulated rich combat experience in defending against pirates. With these factors combined, the navy wasn't being completely overwhelmed by the enemy. Moreover, they had muskets. Not all sailors equipped with muskets joined the melee, some continued to fire. These marksmen were carefully selected, they were quick-witted and accurate. Each of them was accompanied by several specially trained assistants to load ammunition. After firing a shot, they would hand the empty gun to an assistant to load the next round. The marksman would search for the next target while receiving another loaded gun from another assistant, then fire at the new target, repeating the cycle continuously. Unlike some action movies where the protagonist can survive multiple bullet wounds and still fight off enemies, in reality, a single bullet wound often renders a person incapacitated. Furthermore, this world lacks the Hague Convention. The Alda Army's bullets are made of lead. Because lead is relatively soft, it releases all its kinetic energy upon impact, causing severe deformation and even fragmentation of the bullet. This results in a funnel-shaped cavity in the body, with the wound area hundreds of times larger than the bullet's cross-sectional area. Combined with the immense pressure on the circulatory system, the damage is far more severe. The victim's suffering doesn't stop there. If bullet fragments aren't completely removed from the wound, lead poisoning can occur. While Garden's pirates experienced a surge in strength, endurance, and resilience due to drugs, it wasn't to the point of causing drastic changes in their physical structure. Moreover, due to the accelerated blood circulation, a shot to an artery would cause profuse bleeding. On the other hand, even if the accuracy of modern smoothbore muskets at a range of 100 meters was appalling, at such close range on the deck, they were almost impossible to miss. The only thing the gunners had to be careful not to accidentally hit their comrades who were engaged in hand-to-hand combat. As gunfire erupted continuously from the warships, one after another, bloodthirsty pirates fell on the deck. Those shot on vital areas such as the heart and head died instantly, while those shot in the thigh or arm never got up again, and the sailors fighting them would immediately finish them off. The scales of victory quickly tipped in favor of the navy. Chapter 124, A Decisive Battle 5. "Boss," the pirate captain's vice-captain stammered, suggesting to Mudfish Gadden, "should we retreat? Their weapons are too powerful." The remaining leaders, who hadn't participated in the battle, hadn't taken their drugs a second time and remained rational. However, his suggestion received no response. The pirate captain stood there dumbfounded, watching his henchmen being slowly slaughtered by the enemy. "Captain Gadden," the vice-captain called several times, but still received no reply. He cautiously patted Gadden's shoulder. What happened next was completely unexpected. Gadden turned around with almost imperceptible speed, grabbed the vice-captain's throat with his right hand, and with a swift movement, lifted the vice-captain's feet off the deck. A low growl escaped the pirate captain's throat. "Coward. If it weren't for your incompetence, things wouldn't have come to this." Cough. The vice-captain struggled to pry open Garden's fingers, which were tightly embedded in his neck, but all his efforts were in vain. Garden's hand was like a vice, clamping down firmly on his neck. The surrounding pirate leaders were stunned by this sudden turn of events. None dared to step forward to intervene. Soon, the vice-captain's face turned a liverish color from lack of oxygen, and his struggles gradually weakened until he finally lay still, held up by Garden's grip on his throat, his body swaying from the earlier commotion. Ah! Garden roared in catharsis, his right hand digging deeper. His fingers dug deep into the vice captain's throat, tearing off a large chunk of flesh from his neck, along with his Adam's apple, causing blood to gush out. With a thud, the vice captain's body collapsed onto the deck, his throat severely wounded. He was certainly not going to survive. The remaining captains on the ship stood frozen in shock, bewildered by their leader's sudden and brutal attack. They sensed that Gadon was no longer the stoic, emotionless leader they once knew. Gadon, panting, stared at the vice captain's corpse before suddenly raising his head to glare at the group. A chilling voice emanated from the pirate captain's mouth. "What are you bastards still doing here? What else could they be doing? Were they supposed to jump onto the enemy ship like those lackeys and get slaughtered?" The same thought crossed everyone's minds. "Go kill them all, go fight, get over there. To your deaths," the pirate captain roared at his captains like a madman. As soon as Garden finished speaking, a stray bullet flew in and struck one of the leaders in the head. The powerful kinetic energy of the lead bullet ripped his skull off, splattering brain matter onto those around him. With a splash, a leader jumped into the sea and swam desperately towards a nearby naval warship that was nearly finished with the battle. Then, a second, a third, finally, all the leaders remaining with Garden jumped into the sea and swam towards the enemy warship. We surrender, they shouted to the naval officers and men on the warship in the icy water. Their henchmen were almost all dead, their leader had gone mad, the pirate ship and the naval warship were locked in combat, and there was no time to escape. What other choice did they have but to surrender? To fight to the death with unwavering courage? Don't be ridiculous, we're pirates. The gruesome sight of skulls being ripped off spurred these opportunistic pirate leaders into making the most advantageous choice for themselves in an instant. The officers and men on the various warships were busy cleaning up the mess and had no time to deal with them. An officer loudly ordered them to stay put in the water for the time being, knowing these guys were excellent swimmers. Meanwhile, the Hope had finished its battle with the 3 pirate ships. If these 3 pirate ships had braved the cannon fire and rushed in for a boarding maneuver, their numerical advantage should have been enough to take down the Hope. However, they had only recently joined the Mudfish pirate crew, and had never been under the command of each other before or after joining. Their captains were all focused on preserving their own strength. Therefore, each ship hesitated to advance, hoping someone else would take the lead. Without the danger of being caught off guard, the Hope calmly opened fire, not hitting the enemy ships every time, but steadily inflicting more and more casualties on them. Then the crew of the 3 pirate ships saw their leader, Garden's men charge towards the other Alta warships. The battle was so intense it nearly made some men's eyes pop out of their sockets. They had assumed that with the help of the mysterious drug, although the process wouldn't be easy, they could at least defeat the Navy. But reality slapped them in the face. With the scales of victory completely tipped in Alta's favor, 1 pirate ship fled into the distance, while the remaining 2 raised white flags and surrendered to the Hope. The fighting on the decks quickly subsided. Most of the pirates were killed, a small number surrendered voluntarily, and others were captured due to severe injuries. Guided by the prisoners, the naval officers and men found Garden alone on the pirate ship. They spurred their warships to surround Garden's ship. "Surrender. You have no way out," someone shouted at him. "What's the point of surrendering? Just shoot him dead." Others were eager to kill him. "Why don't we blast him to death with cannons? It'll definitely be more exciting than shooting." At this moment, the pirate captain ignored the various voices around him, only muttering to himself, "It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this." His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was stretched backward as if he were laughing hysterically. He simply couldn't accept reality. He had painstakingly accumulated strength and carefully made every choice, and his pirate crew had finally become quite respectable. Then, the appearance of a mysterious figure who claimed to be a wizard gave him powerful assistance. With the help of the wizard's mysterious power, his pirate crew grew rapidly. Just when his dream of becoming the second great pirate Edward was about to be realized, one careless move turned all his long-term efforts into nothingness. "It shouldn't be like this," Garden roared, attracting the attention of the officers and soldiers on the surrounding ships who were discussing how to deal with him. Under the incomprehensible gazes of the crowd, Garden shakily untied a bag from his waist, turned the opening of the bag towards his mouth, and kept pouring something into his mouth. One of the prisoners explained to the naval officers guarding him, He's taking drugs. Those drugs give him superhuman strength. The officers, intrigued, watched the pirate captain's performance intently. What's wrong with his body? A soldier exclaimed incredulously. I'm going to kill you all. I'm going to kill you all. Accompanied by these frenzied words, Gadon, having taken a large dose of the drug, suddenly began to swell, his height increasing to about 2 meters. His clothes ripped apart, revealing explosive muscles in his chest, arms, and thighs. Gadon's face gradually contorted into an indescribable shape, veins bulging on his cheeks, a sight that sent chills down anyone's spine. His fists grew to the size of a clay pot, and that's not a figure of speech, they were literally the size of a clay pot, and at the tips of his thick fingers were fingernails like small daggers. This creature could no longer be called human, it had become a monster. However, the officers watching were not afraid, because everyone could see that the monster was enduring immense pain. The transformed Garden roared, his voice filled with indescribable agony. He slammed his head against the mast repeatedly, making it seem as if it were about to break. Then he frantically dug at his chest with his sharp nails, quickly tearing his body into a bloody mess. Seeing the pirate captain's gruesome state, the crowd was unsure whether to pity him or hate him. Admiral Austin shook his head and gave the order to the sailors, finish him off. A row of sailors, wielding muskets, aimed at Garden. After the gunfire, the sea returned to calm, thanks to Reader for the generous donation. Chapter 125 Unexpected Discovery. Since being knocked unconscious, the girl's attitude towards Alan when he brought her food seemed different. Although her face remained expressionless, she would always thank him. Alan tried to communicate with her, but each time he asked a question, she would either nod or shake her head, making him lose interest in continuing. Only once was there an exception. That day, after he put down the food, the girl suddenly stared at him and asked, "Would you like to be my friend?" Alan was startled. He thought she would only say thank you. Of course, he replied, sweating profusely. Thank you, those 2 words again. Days passed, and everyone seemed to have gotten used to their slave status. Alan himself no longer constantly thought about how to escape. On the 17th, before dawn, a large number of slaves were woken from their sleep. The pirates, looking menacing, ordered them to work at the docks. Even young slaves like Alan, Tom, and Payne were driven there. The dock area was a natural haven, where the mudfish pirates had built various facilities. When Alan arrived, he found many slaves already loading various supplies onto the ships. Although Alan and his children were all minors, the pirates didn't give them any special treatment because of their age. They were also ordered to work, loading loose supplies onto the ships. After several hours of this, the sun rose, and they saw the entire dock area, more than a dozen ships gathered there. Having been kidnapped and brought to the island for so long, this was the first time they had ever seen pirates with such a large force. Hundreds of pirates were gathered on the dock, all looking excited, scrambling to climb onto their respective ships. A large number of slaves serving as oarsmen were also herded onto the ships, and once in their positions, they were securely chained to prevent escape. However, not all oarsmen were slaves, many were newly recruited pirates. The pirates raised the skull and crossbones flag, set sail, and quickly left the dock. Get back to where you were and get back to your work. Don't even think about lounging on the beach. The overseers immediately came over with whips to disperse the slaves and ordered them back to their original tasks. Alan and the others glanced longingly at the beach before turning and heading back to their original camp. Along the way, he and his fellow villagers, Tom and Payne, whispered among themselves about what the pirates were up to. Let me tell you, Payne said mysteriously, we overheard a drunken pirate rambling on, vaguely saying he was going to fight the Alden Navy. Arda? Isn't that the earldom to our north? Alan asked. Yes. It's the Arda that's recently been called a pirate no-go zone, Tom chimed in. I heard from the adults that the Lord of Arda has wiped out a large number of pirates in the past 6 months, since the great pirate Edward disappeared. The 2 most powerful pirate crews in the Northwest Bay, the Shark Pirates and the Quake Pirates, have both fallen in Arda. They say the Lord there isn't much older than us, so, the pirates on this island are going to provoke Arda? They're really bold. Lord of Light, our Heavenly Father, please bless the people of Arda, let them destroy these wicked pirates, and rescue us as well. Wow, Alan thought to himself, listening to his 2 companions. The people living in Arda must be very happy. After all, they have a powerful lord protecting them. And they don't have to worry about pirate invasions. Hey! What are you whispering about? the pirate guarding them shouted, startling the three men who immediately fell silent. Shortly after Alan and his men left, a small boat entered the harbor and docked at the pier. The pirate on guard recognized it as his own ship, but it seemed that the crew and all had been given away to some important figure recently. He immediately summoned his superior. Soon, a person completely shrouded in a black cloak stepped off the ship. The summoned leader, upon seeing the face beneath the hood, immediately adopted a respectful expression. He carefully bowed and greeted the man softly. "Master Barnett, you've arrived." A slightly hoarse voice came from inside the hood. "Yes, take me to your leader," the pirate leader said with some embarrassment. "You've come at a bad time. Our leader led his fleet out early this morning. But if you're in a hurry to see him, I'll send a fast ship to bring him back. If we can find him." Barnett waved his hand and said, "No need. I came to deliver something to you, not specifically to see him." Then he gave another name. He had arranged with Garden that if Barnett wasn't on the island, this person would be responsible for making contact. This one is still on the island. I'll take you to see him right away." The old pirate with the gray hair and a wooden prosthetic leg, responsible for receiving Barnett on behalf of Garden, was clearly a strategist. Barnett handed over the medicine he had brought to this old pirate. The old pirate was extremely grateful. As a trusted confidant of his leader Garden, he knew that his pirate crew's growth to its current state was largely due to this mysterious figure. After exchanging a few words with the wizard, he hinted that he was tired from the turbulent sea voyage. The shrewd old pirate could tell that the other party didn't want to discuss things further, so he asked Barnett to rest for a while before leaving, and then took his leave. Before leaving, he instructed the pirate captain who had brought Barnett to take good care of this master. The pirate captain rolled his eyes. This was a good opportunity to show off. This mysterious figure named Barnett was someone even the leader treated with great respect. He had personally witnessed Garden's behavior in front of this man, a completely different person from his usual self. How can I win this master's favor? The pirate captain racked his brains, thinking hard. I've got it. He slapped his palm, having come up with a brilliant idea. In an elegant room, Barnett was resting with his eyes closed when there was a knock on the door. "Who is it, Master Barnett?" "It's me." He remembered the voice. It was the voice of the junior leader who had brought him here. "Come in." The door opened, and the junior leader bowed obsequiously as he entered. "What can I do for you?" "Master. You must be tired from the long and turbulent journey. I've brought 2 gifts to help you relax." The junior leader called out to the door. "Come in, both of you." Then 2 women, one tall and one short, entered. The taller woman was of average height but had a good figure and looked very nervous. The shorter woman, or rather, the girl, was very cute, but her expression was unreadable. Her eyes stared blankly ahead. Barnett immediately understood what the pirate wanted. These damn pirates. What do they take me for? He was furious and about to explode, extending his arm. Just as the leader was about to suffer a terrible fate, Barnett suddenly stopped. The wizard's gaze lingered on the girl. Something about her attracted him, a quality shared with him and his companions. The arm that was about to deliver a fatal blow extended a finger, pointing at the girl. "She stays. You take the other one." The leader, unaware that he had just wandered to the gates of hell, grinned lewdly. "Hell, master's taste is certainly unique." Barnett glared at him. "Get out of here." "Yes, yes, yes. I'm leaving now." "Enjoy yourself." The leader, thinking Barnett was impatient, immediately closed the door and led the tall woman away quickly. What kind of master is he? He's just like us ordinary mortals," he spat inwardly. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.